I want to welcome you to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live Special Christmas Edition. That's right, here we are coming to you live on Twitter and Facebook and maybe YouTube. I say maybe YouTube because sometimes with YouTube, I don't know anymore. But enough about that. Please pay attention to our nice warning graphic here that tells you this is a show intended for an adult audience, not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised because we may curse to reinforce this concept to avoid this weird copy restriction, which we talked about in a previous episode. But if you're really curious about that, go to our Facebook page, go through the archives, find an episode, and you can learn more about that there. My name is Dave Beatty. I am one of your hosts. For nearly the last, it seems like 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. I worked on a lot of fun things some people have heard of for companies such as DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Lecture Entertainment, all that kind of fun stuff. But enough about that. I want to welcome back my co-host, Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks either watching or listening at home some of the fun things you've done as a creative professional.
Well, Merry Christmas, everyone. I am Eric Alexander, and I am your co-host for the Retro Rogues Live. And I am the Chief Financial Officer of a small production company in Arizona called Bad Bob Productions. And I am also the Associate Producer for the feature film Occupants, which features Star Trek actor Robert Picardo and is currently available for free on Tubi.
Very cool. So we're going to start the episode off here with a little bit of, our house cleaning segment here real quick. This is a piece of art that I actually did in my day job for a coworker. It's a fun piece here. We've got Thor and Rudolph. The signs in the back are not lettered. However, on the actual Christmas cards that we printed, one sign said Asgard and the other one said the North Pole. What the message inside the card was, you'll have to use your imagination. We also have one more new image we want to share. This will actually be my new avatar for the Retro Rogues moving forward. My character is obviously an evil, villainous, transforming robot, sometimes referred to as Decepticon, but it's not a real Decepticon because we don't have the rights to that. But anyhow, it's just a Retro Roguicon, I guess. We have yet to give this guy a name, but this will be my avatar moving forward. We're going to be developing a character, so you'll see fun graphics with him as we move forward. And, of course, last episode we debuted Eric's new avatar, his sort of Sith evil master character as well. So, anyhow, just want to showcase that real quick here at the top of the show.
It's very cool. I really like how that came out. That's pretty cool. And I like the idea of you being an evil, destructive robot. I think that's cool.
I love Transformers as a kid, and we were talking about it. I thought it's like, what kind of a villainous thing do I want to do? I thought about a villainous superhero, but I thought you see so much of that these days. I thought, well, let's do something a little bit different. And I thought about, an old school fun Decepticon kind of looking character. That would be cool. So it's got the classic Japanese robot influence, with the kind of the horns or the crown. Because a lot of the Decepticon characters always seem to have like crowns almost like in their design, or horns or something to kind of suggest that they either wanted to rule or they were evil. Anyhow, so that's
cool.
Well, thank you. It was fun to do. I hope the people at home seeing this are enjoying it too. As I was telling Eric before we went on the show live, I don't really post a lot of this stuff on social media, so your best place to see new art by me is going to be on the live show. So definitely tune in every week and check it out because we'll always have something fun to see. Anyhow,
and then also in regards to that, we had talked off the air. We are going to be streaming on Twitter. Probably starting next week as well. We can do up to 5 5 simultaneous streams with the StreamYard software. So we are going to add another outlet, and we probably will have the Twitter running up and running next week.
Do you mean Twitter or do you mean Twitch?
Oh, geez, you're right. Thank you for that correction. Yes, I meant Twitch. We are going to be coming to Twitch. So yes, that's the other. We currently are streaming on my Twitter account, but we are going to be doing a Twitch account as well, and so we will be streaming on 4 different platforms: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. That will start next week.
Very cool. So we're going to move from that into pop culture news. So in this segment, we talk about all kinds of interesting things happening in the world of pop culture. I don't really have anything this week. Eric, do you have anything in the world of pop culture news?
Well, this is related to our main topic, but I did want to kind of get into this a little bit. Let me pull up the article here and get the share screen going.
I did tell some people who are interested in watching the show tonight before we get into spoilers for our main topic, which would be Rise of Skywalker, that will warn people. So
Definitely, yeah, and I appreciate that as well because actually I kind of saw the movie late because I didn't see it until Sunday, so I definitely appreciate that because it was kind of hard to find a spoiler free reviews. In fact, I actually haven't seen a lot of other people's reviews of the Rise of Skywalker because I didn't see it until Sunday. I was trying to avoid too many spoilers, even though I got a ton of them on my Twitter feed anyway. I already knew the ending before I even saw the movie, so. But there were things that I didn't know about, and so I did appreciate that I got to see in the movie. So as far as news though goes, I wanted to talk about the box office. So it says how much every Star Wars movie made on their opening weekend. Now this is an IGN article. It's a little deceptive because the problem is they don't adjust for inflation, so they're just giving you the raw numbers. And I was kind of surprised by seeing some even with the original Star Wars being 40 years old now,
right,
I didn't realize how small the opening was. But back then, it wasn't about one thing we forget. Because I remember, back in my childhood memory, especially like the early '80s. Back in those days, it wasn't really about the opening weekend. That really wasn't a thing. It was always about how long the movie was actually in the theaters. Remember that? Like
right.
Today, it's like these movies, I mean, they basically make all their money in the first 2 weeks. They make like 90% of their money in the first 2 weeks, these big blockbusters. But growing up, it wasn't like that. Growing up, these movies made money because they were like in the theater literally like for half a year, and they were still showing it. So this is kind of deceptive, but this is interesting, especially once we get to the end because this is in chronological order. But I did think this might be interesting to you and a little surprising. So we start with the original Star Wars. I don't like calling it A New Hope. I just like calling it the original Star Wars, because it wasn't called The New Hope when it first came out. That wasn't in the crawl. That was added later when they realized we were getting a sequel. So anyway, original Star Wars, A New Hope, that was released in May 25th, 1977. Opening weekend was 1.6 million. Can you believe that? That's crazy, isn't it?
Well, I do because I know there's a fantastic documentary called Empire of Dreams. It was on a bonus disc with a special edition DVD release. And I know right now it's actually available if you want to watch it and you have a Disney Plus subscription. It is available on the Star Wars channel. I highly, highly recommend it if you're a Star Wars fan, if you're an industry movie fan. It's very fascinating to watch and see everything that went into a lot of the creation, the financing, and everything for the original three films. Of course, Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Now, I do know from that special that they talked about a lot of theaters did not actually even want to screen Star Wars. They were not interested in it whatsoever.
I can see that.
And apparently, most of the theaters that got it was because they had to agree to show Star Wars if they wanted to screen. I think it was Other Side of Midnight, which was a popular book and a highly anticipated film adaptation. That is a film that is completely lost to time. I had never heard about it.
I've never heard of it. I've never heard of that movie.
Except for that documentary. So that goes to show you how history is. So the fact that the opening weekend was only 1.6 million, it kind of makes sense because they were not in as many theaters as they had hoped because the theaters weren't interested in it. It just looked like some weird schlocky sci-fi film and they weren't interested. So I'm not too surprised.
And like I was saying, back in those days, that's not how they didn't make their money in the first 2 weeks. That's not how movies made money back then. They made their money through these epic long runs. I mean, I think the original Star Wars was still in the theaters like for a year after it came out.
Right.
So
and that's how Titanic set its top of the box office record that still has too. It was because of how long the film was in theaters. That's why that film has, I think it's been bumped now, but for years and years, it was the number 2, top highest, box office grossing film of all time. And it's because it was in theaters for so long. People kept talking about it. More and more people would go check it out and see it. and it was the longevity, the run of the film, which is why it made as much money as it did.
So then we go to Empire. The release date is May 21st, 1980. That's another thing is in the quite a bit of time. We lost the feed for a little bit, but we're back. Opening weekend for Empire Strikes Back was 4.9 million. So they increased substantially, but still that's a surprisingly low number to me, even in the context of how movies worked back then. Surprising. Now, again, these are not adjusted for inflation. So these numbers, if they're adjusted for inflation, will be much bigger. So keep that in mind. These are the raw numbers. Going to Return of the Jedi, that was released May 25th, 1983, 23 million. Quite a leap from the previous films. So you can see how highly anticipated Return of the Jedi was at the time. We forget that too, because back then, everybody knew that the story was kind of ending. There was hope that there would be more movies. There was talk about more movies, certainly about the prequels, right? Everybody anticipated eventually we were going to get the prequels, which that took forever to actually happen, but that was anticipated. But as far as the story, I think back then everybody thought the story was resolved. And I'm going to make that point when we do our review a little bit more. But yeah, you can see that this was highly anticipated because this number is way above Empire and the original Star Wars. Then we go to Phantom Menace, Episode 1. That was released May 19th of 1999, 64.8 million. Okay, now granted, quite a bit of time had passed. Again, these numbers are not adjusted for inflation, but big jump, right? For Episode 1. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. This kind of surprised me. I didn't realize this. So their opening weekend for Attack of the Clones was bigger than it was for Episode 1. And I thought that Attack of the Clones kind of suffered from some of the backlash of Episode 1, because there was a lot of backlash on Episode 1. But they actually had a better opening weekend. This was May 16th, 2002, 80 million. 80 million compared to Episode 1, 64.8 million. So that's interesting. And there's not like a huge gap there between these films, about 3 years, but not a huge gap in terms of inflation and things like that. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. This was also very highly anticipated because this was the end of the prequels. We knew this was the end for this particular cast. May 19th, 2005, 108.4 million. So each one kind of went up. When it comes to the previous two trilogies, you can see this rise, right? You can see this steady rise where every film is kind of building on the previous film, right? Which is what you want as far as the anticipation. We're talking about opening weekend. We're not talking about the total grosses of the films, because those aren't not the same. Like I think for the prequels, I think Attack of the Clones actually made the least amount of money. And I think that's true of the original trilogy as well. I think Empire actually made the least amount of money as well. I have to look that up, but I think that's the case. So even though Empire is generally regarded as the best Star Wars film by most hardcore fans, I have some arguments with that, but that's kind of the general consensus. So now we go to The Force Awakens. Okay, Force Awakens, that came out December 18th, 2015. Opening weekend was 248 million. Quite a bit more than even Revenge of the Sith. Then we go to Rogue One. They included Rogue One. Rogue One's opening weekend was 155.1 million, December 16th, 2016. That's a pretty big number for a non-saga film, Yeah, that's pretty impressive. This is probably my favorite of the Disney Wars films, and I would actually put it up there with any of the original trilogy films and the prequels. I really enjoyed this film. This is one of my favorites, honestly, one of my favorite Star Wars films. Now we go to The Last Jedi. Last Jedi came out Friday, December 15th, 2017. 220 million. That's compared to the 248 million of The Force Awakens. So we have a downward trend there, where the Force Awakens was apparently more highly anticipated than The Last Jedi was. And I think The Last Jedi is probably the most controversial Star Wars film ever made. It is reviled by a lot of people, and it is loved by a lot of people. I am in the category that absolutely hates this movie and thinks it's trash, but that's just me. But you do see a downward trend, which is kind of interesting as far as the openings. And then Solo, a Star Wars story, they included that in this list, came out Friday, May 25th, 2018, 84.4 million. And we all know Solo was kind of a flop. And the as they say, the numbers don't lie. So Solo was I always argue that Solo was the film that nobody wanted and nobody asked for. And it also was, in my opinion, it was like a soft remake. It was going to lead. If this movie had been successful, I guarantee you, they would have introduced the rest of the original trilogy cast, and we would have gotten a new Star Wars movie, a New Hope or whatever. I guarantee you that's what they were trying to do, and I'm so glad this movie failed because of that. Whether you like the movie or not, I believe 100% that's what they were trying to do, was recast the original characters and make their own original trilogy. I think they totally were going to do that. Then we get now to The Rise of Skywalker, and this is the news. This is the latest, the new number. This is the latest number for the opening weekend. Came out on December 20th of this year. 176 million. Now that is compared. We won't compare them to the standalones. But that's compared to 220 million for The Last Jedi, and 248 million for The Force Awakens. So interestingly enough, what you see here that's interesting to me is, whereas the other trilogies kind of built on each other, this trilogy's been going down in anticipation. The numbers have been going down for opening weekend. And these are the worst numbers of the new trilogy. I would really like to see these numbers adjusted for inflation, just to really compare them to the previous trilogies. But there's no question that the current trilogy has been going downward. And I'm going to be really curious to see what the final numbers are for the Rise of Skywalker, because I think it's going to be pretty bad. I don't think this is going to be a home run for Disney as far as the numbers go. But definitely we can see, as I say, numbers don't lie. The anticipation has been going downwards for the new trilogy, as opposed to the other ones where it kept going up. Every opening weekend was bigger and bigger. So I wanted to point that out.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think, in all honesty, I think Rise of Skywalker was still probably, I think it'll still probably break $1 billion. I don't think it's going to be a $2 billion film like, Force Awakens. And I think, wasn't Last Jedi a $2 billion film as well, I think?
I would have to look at those to see. Yeah.
I think it'll still make money. And the reason I'm glad for that is because I like Star Wars and I want to see more Star Wars content down the road. But I think too, the downward trajectory kind of shows that there were some missteps made, as far as the fans and of Star Wars, kind of feel. You can kind of see it in the numbers, So I'm kind of hoping that they'll, it's one of those things. It's like I think for me, the biggest things with these new films is I really didn't like what they did with the original trilogy characters. At the end of the day, that's my big gripe and my big complaint. I don't want to get too much farther into that because we'll be talking about original trilogy characters here, and as we get into the Rise of Skywalker review, and then the spoiler review, much later in the show. But no, yeah, I still think it'll break $1 billion because I still want it to do well enough because I still want more Star Wars. I'm just not sure if I'm keen on more of this particular vision of Star Wars.
Right.
But we'll get into that a little bit later in the show.
No, for sure. I just wanted to point out that it's interesting to me when you look at the previous films that there was this upwards trend, and that opening box office number is a good number to show you where the anticipation was, like how much these films were building on each other, and people were getting more and more excited, as the trilogy ended. And you have that with the previous two trilogies, but with this one, it's been down. It's been down.
Right.
Every movie has gone down. So
Right.
that's pretty interesting to me. That kind of shows you that there's a sort of fundamental problem there. But we'll see. We'll see. I do think you're right that it'll probably make a billion, at least a billion. I'm not saying it's not going to be profitable. That wasn't what I was trying to say. But I do think it's going to be on the lower end of the new trilogy films. It's definitely not going to match The Force Awakens. I'll tell you that.
No, I don't think so.
And you kind of compare this to Endgame, right?
Right.
Endgame's a good comparison. In fact, Endgame is probably the only comparison you can make, because this film was marketed as this is the end of the Skywalker saga, right? This is the end of the story. 9 films. Like I said, the only thing you can really compare this to is the Marvel films. There's nothing else that has that scope, We're talking about 3 trilogies, 9 films. And Endgame is now the biggest film ever, okay? As far as just raw numbers, not adjusted for inflation. Adjusted for inflation, as far as I know, I think Gone with the Wind is still number 1. But not adjusted for inflation, Endgame is now number 1. And that was the end of that sort of story. That was the end of that era of the MCU that started with Iron Man, ended with Iron Man. It's a huge event. And Star Wars certainly should be able to compete in that field. Star Wars should be able to compete in that field easily. Star Wars was making great movies long before Marvel was. Even though Marvel was making great comic books, they were not making great movies. In the 70s. So they had a head start, and to me, it's a huge playground to play in. It's awesome. That's what I love. I've always talked about. I love the lore, the world building. We kind of see that with the Mandalorian, where they're going in different directions and different parts of the galaxy and all that stuff. So it's sad to me. It really is, because I am a Star Wars fan, and it's sad to me that you kind of see what Disney has done, and it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of speechless to a certain extent. With this whole thing, it's like, what are you guys doing? You could see the numbers. Don't you guys realize you need to do something? And when we get into our review, I will concede. I think they did try to do something, and I'll talk about that more in our actual review. But I do think the trend is interesting and it's disturbing. We'll see what happens as they go forward and they start doing other things.
Right.
That's the plan. We have no idea where they're going to go, where they're going to take us. I just know that Disney is happy to be free of the original trilogy, unfortunately. And we'll just see what they do going from there. What they slap Star Wars on. I'm hoping that the people that were involved with The Mandalorian are going to be kind of taken over creatively, because I think if that's the case, they're going to be on a much better path. But we'll have to see what they do.
Right.
All right.
Cool. Do you have anything else for pop culture news?
No. I think we can go into streaming wars. I don't think I have anything else for pop culture news.
Okay.
So, and I didn't have a whole lot for streaming wars, but I do have a couple articles here.
No, yeah. Let's get into it.
So this first one, I didn't want to talk about too much, but I did want to kind of just kind of briefly get into it, because this is not an aspect of the streaming wars I had even really considered. It wasn't on my map. Ironically, just this weekend, with my kids, I decided to do the entire Disney Plus package, which means I got Hulu and ESPN Plus.
Right.
And my kids are really into anime, and I didn't realize Hulu has a lot of anime on it. And so we were actually watching My Hero Academia for the first time with me. My kids are really into it, but this is the first time I got to watch it. And I watched I think 4 or 5 episodes with them, and I really kind of liked it. Have you seen that? Have you seen My Hero Academia?
I have not seen any of it, no.
Okay. Do you like anime in general? We haven't really talked about anime before, so.
I mean, I grew up watching a lot of anime. I think Did we show the ship for Red Skirts in the last episode? I think we did. That's heavily influenced by Star Blazers or a space battle fortress Shamato. I think it's what it's called in the original Japanese, but obviously that's not Japanese, that's English, but you know what I mean. The Japanese title was different than what we got. But I grew up watching Star Blazers, Speed Racer, Voltron, which was, I think it was, I'm not going to try and do the other names. Transor Z was a favorite of mine as a kid.
I remember Transor Z.
Yeah,
I remember
loved
that.
Transor
Grew up
Z.
watching that.
I loved all of that stuff. A lot of the cartoons that you and I watched were actually, produced by a lot of the same animation studios. But I remember seeing, being really young and seeing, on VHS, things like Fist of the North Star, Battle Angel Alita, a lot of these things that went on to live in other media. Obviously, Robotech, big, huge series for me. I love Robotech. Robotech, again, also has a huge influence on Red Skirts as well as Star Blazers. So, and I've watched some of the newer stuff. I don't know. Some of the newer stuff doesn't quite click with me. I wanted to watch that new Ultraman series they had on Netflix. And I don't know. Something about the pacing and the way the animation was being handled was a little weird. But I've not seen My Hero Academia. I see a lot of people, talking about it and excited for it. And then there's a lot of the newer stuff I've tried to watch. There was a weird space Flash Gordon kind of series, Space Dandy. I watched a little bit of Space Dandy and a couple other different things, but I'm not big into anime, not the newer stuff anyway. Whenever I watch something, I'm going back to a lot of the more classic stuff. Those shows, there's something about the context and the content and whatever that still speaks to me. My previous series I did, Bushi Tales, was also heavily, well, not heavily, but definitely influenced by, it's the ninja one. I can't remember the name of it. It's the big crazy, not ninja, the samurai ninja animated film. Now I can't remember the name of it. That's really bad. I should totally remember that. It's a classic, and I can't even remember the name of it. So I have watched a lot of anime. I do watch anime from time to time, but I'm not a huge fan of the current stuff.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same category. Although, like I said, I recently, like just yesterday, was watching My Hero Academia with my kids, and of course that does add to the experience as well because my kids are really into it and they're watching it and all that kind of stuff. So, but I liked it, and I actually recommend it to you to check it out because I'm in the same boat. Like I have not supported very much modern anime. I grew up on Robotech. I love Robotech. And of course, Robotech is kind of unique because of the way they handled the story and all that kind of stuff. It really is kind of a unique thing because, it's those three unrelated shows that were kind of just put together with a single narrative. And I thought they did a really good job of doing that.
Right.
I really like that whole idea. But as far as modern anime goes, I'm in the same category as you where I haven't seen a lot. But so I didn't think about this. I did not think about anime as being a front on the streaming wars. This is an article from The Verge. It's dated December 23rd, 2019. A fairly new article, and it says anime is one of the biggest fronts in the streaming wars. I hadn't even considered this. And what's interesting is this article talks about how there are so many streaming platforms currently that have a significant amount of anime. Crunchyroll is one that's like exclusively anime. Funimation Now, another anime channel. But then, of course, Netflix has a ton of anime. Mm-hmm. Amazon Prime has a ton of anime. And then there's another service I never heard of, which is High Dive. And apparently that's a big anime source. And it mentions that if you were to have all of these services, if you're a big anime fan, and you had all these services, it would cost you $42.95 a month to pay for all these. And that's one aspect of the streaming wars that I've been trying to cover is how much is this all going to cost? And these are existing services. And oddly enough, I was just talking about Hulu. Hulu has a ton of anime too, and
Right.
they mention it later in the article. But in this particular breakdown, they don't even talk about Hulu. They talk about Hulu a little bit later here in the article. But it's kind of interesting as far as all these different shows, and what the article talks about is one of the issues is even though a lot of these platforms have the same shows, they don't all get the shows at the same time. And this is apparently a big issue with anime fans, because a lot of the anime fans, they want these shows as close to when they come out in Japan as possible. And I know that's been an issue with my kids, talking with my kids, because I think they use the free Crunchyroll, and I know obviously we're kind of using Hulu now, but we just barely got Hulu. And I think Netflix, that's where they primarily see their anime. And they've kind of mentioned to me casually that this is an issue where they're like waiting for a season, like the next season, for like years, like it seems, like they're just waiting forever because of the particular platform and because they're not all the same. So so this was an interesting thing. That was kind of what this article was all about. So it was kind of breaking down these different services and which shows if you like this particular show, it's like you kind of have to have this service, because this is the one that really supports it and gets it out in a timely manner. So it's kind of interesting. It's something that I hadn't considered as far as one of the fronts of the streaming wars. And these are pretty much all existing, streaming channels are talking about. These are not new ones, because as far as I know, that isn't something. Obviously, Disney isn't getting into that right now, although they do with Hulu, right? Hulu has a lot of anime. And then Apple Plus hasn't really got into this either, but it's just kind of interesting to see all these different services and them talking about these issues as far as, if you want to see this show and you want to see it when it's coming out, you're going to have to get this service. But if you like this show, you're going to have to do this service, even though both services have the same show.
Right.
So that's what I found really interesting about this article. And I thought was, like I said, it was something I hadn't even really thought about. It wasn't really on my radar as far as something that might contribute to the winners and losers of the streaming wars. But I thought I would bring it up, even though, like I said, I'm not a huge anime guy, but my kids are. The kids enjoy it, and I do think it's going to be something that's going to be a factor in the streaming wars.
Yeah, it's interesting because and the series whose name I could not remember is Ninja Scroll.
Ninja Scroll, okay, I've heard of that. And I don't think I've seen it, but I have heard of it.
Ninja Scroll is really great. I can highly recommend it. And then along those same lines, I was thinking about there's a lot of stuff I grew up watching I shouldn't have seen. There was also anime, things like Crying Freeman. I should not have been watching Crying Freeman at the age in which I was watching it. So it's not like I have like huge anime, credentials or anything, but I have grown up watching a lot of it, and I've also grown up reading a lot of manga too. Not to the extent of some people, but definitely at least on par with some of my contemporaries as far as some of the comic artists working in the industry.
Yeah, I hear that. I totally hear that. So this is the other article that I got that was kind of more in line with the coverage we've been doing. These are some comments from the CEO of Showtime. This is a CNBC article. It came out Tuesday, December 24th. So this is a very recent article. It says it will take years before winners of the streaming wars emerge. Former Showtime CEO says. That's a former.
Okay. Before you go any further, scroll back up. I want everyone to notice that this is written by, looks like Mr. Stank, at Kevin Stank. little Marvel reference there for people who like the Marvel movies. I just thought it was interesting. That's not his actual last name. I just thought it was funny. His Twitter, his handle there is Kevin Stank. So Mr. Stank. Anyhow, sorry. I thought it was amusing. Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't even notice that. So key points. It says the streaming wars accelerated in 2019, but it will be a while before the winners emerge, former Showtime Network CEO Matthew Blank said. He said, quote, these free subscribers are going to be moving through the universe for the next 2 or 3 years for all these services, and you're really not going to know what these businesses look like told CNBC. Now, at first, I had no idea what he meant by this. I was like, free subscribers, what are you talking about? Well, the article goes on to explain what he's talking about is the fact that, for instance, AT&T is going to be bundling HBO Max, right? Verizon is giving you Disney for free for a year, okay?
Right.
It looks like Apple is giving away a free year of Apple TV when a customer buys a new iPhone, Mac, iPad, or Apple TV box. So that's what he's talking about, and this is something I hadn't really considered either, and that's interesting. So you have this situation where a lot of these bundling options are happening, and as a result, we're really probably not going to know, how popular these streaming sites really are until these trials go away. So it's going to take us a year to really know how well Disney Plus is doing, because after a year, when those Verizon customers have to start paying for Disney Plus, will they?
Right.
And that's a good point. I think that's a really good point in these streaming wars, is that yes, there is a lot of bundling going on, and until these trials and things go away, we won't have a good picture. I think it's kind of a manipulated picture, is what I'm saying, of how truly popular these sites are. Obviously, these guys are in it for the long haul. But still, I think he makes a good point. I think it's a valid point. It's definitely something to consider in these streaming wars, and it's something that I hadn't thought about before. But it makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. That is interesting. I hadn't given that a lot of thought, but it makes sense. It's going to take a little while with all the bundling, and it's one of those things that makes you wonder if, for some of these companies, if this media content, it's not so much selling the media content as using the media content to sell the device to watch it on. For some of these companies, it might be more important to sell self-service and a phone, than necessarily, the streaming service that's packaged with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I have AT&T, and AT&T gives you HBO now. But I don't know. It sounded like from this article, they aren't going to be giving me HBO Max unless I'm subscribed to regular HBO. So that's interesting. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but I actually do get HBO now. Not HBO Max hasn't come out yet, but I do get HBO now because I have AT&T. So it'll be interesting to see how that stuff all works. Like I said, like Verizon, obviously that's a big one. That's an obvious one. After a year, those Verizon customers that are enjoying Disney Plus, they'll no longer have it for free. So will they stay? That's the big question. That's really the big question.
And see, for me, like, I'm basically paying for all of my stuff. I don't have anything that's bundled with anything. So I'm paying for Disney Plus. I'm paying for CBS All Access. You know what I mean? I'm paying for Amazon Prime. So none of my stuff is packaged with anything. And it's interesting because, like, I always want to get rid of Netflix. Like, that's the one I want to get rid of. And Lost in Space Season 2 is basically rolling out, I think, as of today. And I really liked Lost in Space Season 1. Did you watch Lost in Space Season 1?
I haven't seen it. I just haven't. It's funny with Netflix when you talk about Netflix, because I was nodding to you, because I don't use Netflix that much. I really don't. And I think part of it is because I'm a little overwhelmed by it. Like when I first got Netflix, I would spend hours just going through all the different things, just looking for something. And
right.
I would literally do that for like hours, like trying to find something to watch. And it was like, well, I want to watch this. So what happened is I have, like, you have your little play queue or whatever. You can add things to watch later, that you're interested in. My queue was like hundreds of things. It was just huge.
Right.
And I haven't watched half of them. So I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where, because I don't use it a whole lot, I've considered getting rid of it, especially with some of this other stuff that's coming out that I'm maybe a little more interested in. But I've kept it because of my kids. That's the main reason I've actually kept Netflix, because my kids watch a lot of stuff on there. So I don't know. I mean, like right now, I went ahead and I'm trying the Disney bundle. I'm doing Disney Plus with ESPN Plus and Hulu. And I will say I am annoyed by the ads in Hulu. I'm annoyed that I have to pay for ads,
Right.
But yeah, I'm kind of liking it. Like I said, I mean, we watched a bunch of My Hero Academia on Hulu the other night, and we had a great time. So I mean, that's kind of like paying for it already. That experience, sitting down with the kids and watching these shows. And then I'm definitely going to be using the ESPN Plus a lot because I'm a big college football fan. So one of the reasons I did the bundle was so I can see the bowl games.
Right.
I want to watch the bowl games. So in fact, it's kind of funny. Like I don't know if you're into college football, but it's kind of funny. Like last night, the Hawaii BYU game, which that wasn't like a highly regarded bowl. I mean, Hawaii is pretty decent this year, but they're not considered one of the top conferences. But anyway, it was a great game. It was a really good game, like just went back and forth. And so yeah, so I'm trying them all out right now. But yeah, I've seriously considered getting rid of Netflix, and I wonder how many other people are thinking about that right now, especially as they're doing stuff like me, where they're getting the Disney Plus bundle.
Right.
You can't really justify, for long term keeping both. That adds up over the course of a year.
Right.
So we'll see, right? We'll see how other people react to this and what they decide to do.
Well, if you'll share my screen, I've got the trailer for Lost in Space Season 2 here. I'm going to let it run in the background, just so people have not been watching Lost in Space. They get a sense. Oh, this is great. Look at it. It's buffering. Look at that buffering. Anyhow, this series has incredible production values. I mean, it's incredibly well produced. I really, really liked season 1. The cast is really great. The effects are really great. I mean, seriously, if wow, this is really bad. If you have Netflix and you love science fiction and you have not tried Lost in Space, this is something you should definitely check out. Season 1 and season 2 are on there now. I highly, highly recommend them. They're very much inspired by the original Lost in Space. That it is pretty different, but it's good. It's really good. But you can see here. I mean, you can see the production value.
Yeah, I have seen some of the. I don't know if I saw this particular trailer, but I have seen some scenes from the show, and yeah, it does look like it has really good production value. I just, I don't know. Well, you've seen it, so I mean, it's completely different than the original TV show, right? I mean,
yeah, it's very different.
To do with it, right?
It's very different. I mean, it kind of takes some elements that was from the rebooted film, and it's kind of borrowing some of those, and then it kind of plays the concepts and ideas from the original show, and then kind of taking a different spin on it. But it's really well done. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised with season 1 and season 2 based off I haven't had a chance to watch the new episodes yet, but season 2, the trailers and stuff I've seen, it looks really good. So just if you like science fiction, if you enjoy this kind of genre entertainment, if you already have Netflix and you have not checked out Lost in Space, I'd definitely say check out season 1. And if you like it, obviously continue on to season 2. But I really like season 1, so I'm looking forward to watching this. So, I just thought I'd take a minute and talk about Lost in Space. So,
well, actually, that's a good segue into one of the other things I wanted to show you and bring up, which is also a trailer. Let me get my share screen going here. I'm guessing you've seen this. This is a teaser, but I hadn't discussed this with you, so I'm kind of just throwing it at you right now. This is the latest Picard teaser. Have you seen it?
I think I saw the most recent one. If you'll play it, I think there hasn't been that many, so I probably did see it.
This is pretty quick. I think it's like, let's see.
Yeah, I saw
it's
that.
like 30 seconds.
I watched it.
So I did want to go ahead and get a little trailer reaction from you because there's a couple of things that I saw that I thought were interesting. So we have this first scene here. Now, I did not realize this until I saw somebody else commenting. Do you realize that he's in 10 forward here?
Oh, no, I did not realize that. No.
So apparently this is some sort of a dream sequence. I didn't catch that. I got that from, I think, like one of the, some Star Trek website was talking about this.
Right.
And it goes by so fast. That's one of the reasons I like to do trailer reactions with you, is these things go by so fast, and I don't usually go frame by frame by myself. I like doing it with you, and I like to get your reaction and see what you see, or if you caught something I didn't catch. But anyway, yeah, this was something for me that I was really surprised about. Apparently, he's in 10 forward, so this apparently is some sort of a dream sequence. And one of the things that I've been speculating about with Picard is he experiencing that dementia that he's supposed to have?
Right.
Is that starting to happen? Because this would be the time frame based on the ending of the last episode of Star Trek.
All good things.
All good things, right?
That was the Irematic syndrome, wasn't it?
Right. But we're literally at that time period now, right? That episode depicted. So I'm wondering if he is experiencing dementia, or if it's some sort of post-traumatic stress, or what's going on. If he has some sort of a mental problem is what I'm wondering, But anyway, apparently that's what this is. So he's kind of having this little, and you can see 10 forward clearly there, right? That's clearly
right.
10 forward. You can see the windows. It looks like some sort of, I don't know, explosion or something is going on this planet.
Well, and see, judging by this, and I could be wrong, because we talked about the first episode of that Picard comic, but this kind of imagery, like this right here, is kind of reminding me of that. So I'm wondering if what we're seeing with him here is a combination of things, and if maybe this does reflect something that happened as a byproduct of that story that they're doing in the Picard comic.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I could see that. I could definitely see that. We were talking off the air. We plan to review the second issue of Picard Countdown in our next show. But I have read it. I have read it already. And yeah, that is interesting. That's an interesting perspective. Again, that's why I like talking to you about this stuff. So it looks like this planet's blowing up. That went by way too fast.
Right.
This planet's blowing up. And then we get this segue of scenes. And the one that I wanted to stop on is it's really tricky because it goes by so fast. And I'm trying to get that Borg image. That's what I'm trying to get. So we got Data again.
Right.
Where is that Borg image? It goes by so fast because this is like our first kind of image of what the Borg look like now. And it goes by so fast, I can't even catch it. I can keep getting to Data, but I can't catch. There we go.
Yeah.
So have you seen this? So this is apparently what the Borg look like now.
Yeah. I saw it in this because I did actually see this trailer. So I saw this image within the context of that, but I haven't seen it still framed. So
yeah, kind of interesting, huh?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's reflective of what we're, familiar with. It's a little updated, but it's not so heavily updated that you wouldn't recognize what it is. That's what I like. Like with the Klingons, they updated them so much in Discovery, you wouldn't even know what they were. You'd think they were something else.
Well, I'm wondering about the context of this because, yeah, you brought up an interesting point. Like, is this sort of a quote-unquote updated, new redesign, or is this the result of the Romulan experimentation on the Borg? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It clearly looks like he's hooked up to something. So
yeah,
I'm wondering if this kind of new look is in fact, the result of the Romulan experimentation that we know is going to be going on in Picard. That's just, that's not a spoiler. I mean, everybody knows that. So,
right.
So we get these flurry of images. We're back on this sort of desert planet that we've seen in other trailers before, that a lot of people are speculating this is some sort of like Romulan refugee camp. Have you heard that?
Yes,
That
yes, I've heard
speculation?
that. Yeah, I've heard that.
In fact, I don't know if I'll be able to get it, but I know there's an image coming up where it's Picard and he's walking into that. Actually, it's coming up, so let's see if I can get it. So, yeah, right here. Here it is. You see this sign here?
Yeah, Romulan only.
Yeah, Romulans only. And Picard is going up here. So clearly there's some Romulans sitting here. I'm guessing this is some sort of like a patio bar type thing, a restaurant,
Right.
tavern. And clearly something's going on. And that's it. Now this is kind of actually kind of consistent with the comic book, right?
Yeah.
When you think about this, because the story that we're getting in the comic book, for people that haven't read the comic but are interested, I'm not going to try to spoil it, but we did a full review of the first issue. And this particular thing, this Romulan only thing, it kind of fits into what's going on in the comic, in my opinion, as far as the attitude of the Romulans, which I find fascinating. Is like, so even with losing their planet, they're still royal dicks, apparently.
Yeah. It's interesting because the way the comic kind of looks at them and the way that they're treating some of these different alien races in the comics, it would almost be like, before the Civil War happens, you're in a ship and you're basically trying to, rescue the plantation owners,
Right. Yeah.
It's a weird thing. It's like you're trying to save a civilization that's doing something so horrendous. You're beginning to question. It's like, should we save these people? I don't know. So the comic is definitely an interesting read.
Well, that's a great analogy because, when you talk about the plantation owners, literally they represented a very small percentage of the population.
Right.
But they were in control. And that's kind of the situation you apparently have, which I'm really digging. So the idea is, yes, of course, there are tons of normal Romulans that have nothing to do with any of this,
Right.
That are probably just as oppressed as anybody else, right? Because it's like a dictatorial kind of government. They do have a Senate, but it comes across as very very totalitarian, right? As far as the way the Romulans work. We know the Tal Shiar is everywhere. They obviously have secret police, right? So it's an interesting setup to me that you have this situation, and like you were talking about with this idea of we're rescuing the plantation owners. Well, there's lots of normal Romulans that probably have nothing to do with that. But at the same time, that doesn't mean they're not racists, right? Because the average, using your analogy, the average, white Southerner at that time was very racist, right?
Right.
That doesn't, so it's interesting, right? It kind of creates a dynamic that I think if they play it right, could be very interesting, and real deep, very deep, which is what I like about Star Trek. I like my Star Trek deep. I want it to challenge me and make me think, right?
Right.
That's what Star Trek is all about. So it is interesting. So we have this apparent some sort of like apartheid system or Jim Crow type situation going on with these Romulan refugees. I just think that's amazing that these guys have lost their planet. They basically lost their empire. And they're still just being dicks, Yeah. But that's very Romulan. That's very Romulan. That's like, I could kind of see that. Because the Romulans have always been kind of like that.
Yeah.
We get another little scene here. I think this is back in that 10 forward situation that Picard is talking to somebody that maybe in his mind, like I'm really wondering about that if Picard has got that dementia going on.
Right.
Here we get the date, January 23rd. It's when the show is coming out. This is I believe the main ship, which do you know the name of it?
No, I do not.
But I think this is the main ship that they're traveling in, that Picard has, which is not a Starfleet vessel. We've kind of talked about our disappointment that it's not a Starfleet vessel. It's kind of more, I guess, like Firefly, right? It's probably a good analogy.
Yeah.
They're kind of rogues and just kind of running around.
Yeah. Not loving that, but yeah.
This is a great image of Seven of Nine.
Right.
Nice image of her, but nothing we haven't seen before. It looks like they were talking, and they were talking about this character, which I always forget her name because it's kind of an unusual name. But they were the scene, the dialogue of that previous scene was basically like Seven saying, "What are you doing, Picard?" kind of thing, and it's like, "Hey, I'm trying to basically save this person that nobody else is going to help." Which, by the way, I have a friend on Twitter that totally believes this character is the daughter of Seven of Nine. But I think this trailer completely annihilates that theory, because if she is basically talking about, Picard, like, why are you helping this person? It couldn't possibly be her daughter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, granted, the way that trailers are edited, they kind of want to make you think something that's not necessarily what's going on. Like, the trailer is kind of its own little story that might have nothing to do with the actual story in the show, right?
Right.
They do try to deliberately mislead us. But I would say, as far as my theory goes, because a lot of people are speculating on this character, who she is, if she's related. I think there's some people that even think it's Picard's daughter. I would say for me, this is more evidence that she is not Seven of Nine's daughter. For fans, thinking that.
Can I throw out my crazy theory that I know is totally wrong?
No, go ahead. That's exactly why I was talking about this.
All right, so there's no way it could be this character unless they kind of give us an evolution of how they got there. But every time I see this character, I keep thinking of, I don't remember the character's name off the top of my head, but do you remember when Data created that child?
Yes.
I for some reason in the back of my head, I keep having this weird feeling that this character is an offshoot of Sung's research combined with Borg technology, and somehow she has that identity planted in her head. And basically, this is essentially a very super advanced prototype android, the next evolution, the next step beyond Data, and that she's actually running around with Data's daughter's memories in her head.
Really?
That's my crazy theory. I know there's no way in the world that's true, but every time I see this character, that's what I think. But I know it's not true.
But so you think this is Data's daughter, essentially?
I do. I think that because they keep showing us like those other Sung androids, it's almost like they're trying to put them into some kind of servitude or something, or they represent additional research. We see the remains of Data in some kind of a vault, kind of a situation. Picard keeps seeing flashes of Data.
Well, I just want to just back you up for a second, because Brent Spiner has said that's B4. That's not Data. That's B4.
Okay. But anyhow, if you remember, like, they deactivated her because she was malfunctioning, okay?
Right.
And they couldn't do anything to save her. And then Data took her consciousness and integrated it into his positronic brain, right? Into his memories. Every time I see this character and I see all the images are giving us, I know there's no way in the world it could be, but I keep having these weird flashes that this is a totally new Sung-style android with Borg technology, that it's the next evolution. It's super mega advanced. It's beyond anything we've ever seen before. It's basically like a replicant and Blade Runner kind of idea, but it's an outgrowth of Sung's research, Data's research, that other guy at Starfleet, the Borg, and the Romulan experimentation. And the reason that she's running around is because she's got Data's daughter's memories implanted in her head, and that's why she knows to go to Picard. Now, that's crazy. That makes no sense. I know there's no way that could be it. But every time I see this character, it's what I think of.
Well, I honestly really dig your theory. I think that's an awesome theory. And I think even if it's not completely true, I could totally see elements of that being true. And I love it. I think that's a great theory, Dave. I really dig it. I think if that's what they did, if they do go that route, and we do know from the previous trailer, you pointed out that yes, those are Sung style androids in that first big trailer,
right?
Which, by the way, I didn't catch that. I thought that they were just Borg without the implants or something. And so, yeah, those are clearly like a bunch of datas. It's clearly what those are. And it makes me really, especially if your theory is correct, it really makes me hope and wish that they actually have Brent Spiner play Lore. Because that, with Hugh and that entire thing makes sense. Hugh makes a lot more sense, being in the show. If that's the route they go, that basically the Romulans are not only experimenting on the Borg, but also have acquired or are trying to acquire that the Starfleet technology of the Sung style androids. That's a great place to go. That's pretty cool, and it would make a lot of sense with Hugh being a major character, right?
Yeah, I think
it would
so.
make a lot of sense. But I would just love, I don't think they're going to do it, but I would just love, if that is the case, I would love to see Brent Spiner return as Lore. I think that would be great. And he could be the villain, the main villain of the show.
Yep.
That would be that gives me chills. I know they're not going to do it. That gives me chills. Wouldn't that be so cool if that's what happened? If that's where we ended up at the end of the first season? That was like the cliffhanger. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And see, part of the reason I have this idea is because in the second trailer, they showed us Data had started a painting, and it's a solitary figure, and it's like she's on a cliff, and there's raging waters all around her, and she seems like she's lost, and she's not sure where to go. And then he turns to Picard and wants Picard to finish her story. It's up to you. I've started this painting, but you have to finish the story. You have to lead this character to wherever she needs to go. And that's why I really have this idea in my head that this is, essentially in a weird way, it's not Picard's daughter, it's not Seven's, but in a weird way, I think this is actually Data's daughter.
Man, if that's the case, Dave, that's some deep, awesome writing. If that painting is that analogy that, Data has started this, he's dead. Now Picard has to finish this.
Yeah.
Literally, this is Data's legacy. This is his offspring,
Right.
That would be so cool. So cool. Like I said, the only thing that would be missing that I don't think they'll do, because I think your theory could totally be right. I think you could totally be right. This is some good writing, if that's the case. This is some really good writing. But the only thing missing that I don't think they'll do is, I would just love if Brent Spiner came back as Lore and he became the main enemy. That I think that would just make it. Then I would just have everything. I would just be like, this is awesome.
And it could even be one of those things where he's not, the black hat bad guy either. I mean, Lore could be trying to get her back because he sees her in a sense like, Sung's, not just Data and his legacy, but also Sung and oddly enough, partially his legacy too. Maybe he can learn something for her to advance his own evolution, one, but then number two, in the same point, he could in his own way be protecting, his possible future and legacy through her too. He could totally believe that he's in the right, using that justification, even if in reality he just wants to take her apart like that guy did at Starfleet with Data. You know what I mean? But go ahead.
Well, the thing is, though, that this would be part of Lore's legacy, because Lore was the one who first got with the Borg and tried to do this. He was the one that was trying to infuse Borg technology with his own, with the Sung style android. Right. He was trying to get fully artificial life. He was trying to make the Borg become fully artificial. That was the dream. That was his goal.
Right. But I'm just saying his motivations could be, in his mind anyway, a little bit more noble, and also seeing in this character, protecting his own legacy. Like I said, if in reality he just wants to get her back somewhere and take her apart and figure out a way to augment himself. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, but no, I just, anyhow, every time I see this character, that's all I see. I keep thinking that somehow this is Data's daughter, and explains why Picard is taking the ownership that he's like, and he's standing there in an admiral's office, and he's explaining, he's like, you don't understand, we have to do this. This is our responsibility, and it would explain part of his passion to protect this stranger that walks up out of nowhere. At least judging by the trailer, and you never know. Her walking up to him, in that context that we see in that other trailer, that might be a delusion. That may not actually be happening in real time. I mean, he could be somehow receiving a subliminal, message or an image, you know what I mean, a vision, and realizing the importance of this character. I don't know. That's just what every time I see this character, it's all I see. But I like I said, I really don't think that's the case. I really don't think that's what they're doing. But every time I see this character, so what I imagine is happening in my mind anyway. That's what I see unfolding.
Well, it's a great theory. I actually really hope you're right. I kind of hope the 7 theory is wrong, honestly, even though my friend is really into that. But I personally think your idea is great. I would love to see it. I can see it from the trailers, that being the case. So we'll see, because I think that's a great theory. So obviously here we get another image of these people that are chasing her.
Right.
Got any theories? I think a lot of people just think they're like Tal Shiar or something like that. But you have any other theories on who's chasing her?
I think whoever they are, they're in a disguise, and we're not going to know. And you know what I mean? Like if they're on a Federation world trying to apprehend someone, regardless of who they are, they're probably in disguise. So I don't think there's a lot to read into what they're wearing, because I really think it's just a disguise.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm wondering if obviously this image is a little blurry, but I'm wondering if it'll be a little bit more clear at all, if there'll be kind of any insignia or something. I don't know if other people have broken that down, maybe come up with something definitive. But yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I'm thinking that they're Romulan agents, but we'll find out. We'll find out what's going on. So they're fighting there.
Yeah, and I think it could be anyone that thinks that they could benefit. If she is a highly super advanced android, there's any number of people that could benefit from the technology, so it could be anyone after her. So
absolutely. Good image here of Patrick Stewart. He's in casual clothing, but he does have his communicator on.
Yeah.
Starfleet communicator. We got this sort of badass image of 7 of 9 that I know a lot of 7 of 9 fans are just loving this, totally eating it up. So a cool image of her, but this is nothing new. We've seen this before. This is an image. I don't think we've seen this character before, have we?
No, I don't think so.
And this looks to me like we're in some sort of med bay. I can't recognize this. This guy isn't part of the main cast, is he?
I mean, he looks a little bit like the captain guy, but I don't think it's him unless he's been hit with some kind of aging ray. So
yeah, it looks like he's being examined or something like that. And Picard is clearly talking over him. I don't know if the character's dying or what, Got an image of these sort of mysterious ships that we've seen before, that people are speculating about. Like, what is this, And do you have any theories?
No.
Who these people are? Apparently they're attacking a Federation space station. We do see the Federation symbol up here.
Right.
That's what it looks like to me. They're attacking some Federation colony or something like that.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it could be, it could be some sort of, because you figure if the Romulans are figuring this, in some way the Remans have to figure into this too. So, it could be Romulans, it could be some kind of advanced ship, it could be a Reman ship. Between the temporal Cold War we saw in Enterprise and everything else, I mean, literally it could be anybody. But also too, like I said before, this could be someone we're not expecting, and they could be acting and pretending as if they are Romulan, and in reality, it's a completely different group that's trying to apprehend this girl. Sure. I mean, so I don't know. Until we get a little bit further into it, I can't. Judging by the ships, I mean, I could see it being some kind of an advanced Romulan type design. But But beyond that, I don't have a lot of speculation for it, to be honest.
They kind of remind me of Tholian ships.
Yeah, I could see it being Tholian, but to me, it's just with the way that it's kind of fanned out, kind of a little bit like a bird. That's just what it reminds me of. But I could see Tholian too. I could totally see Tholian. So
yeah, I think most fans think these are Romulans. These are new Romulan ships, but I haven't heard anything definitive about who these are, who these. And some people have speculated that they're an entirely new player. They're an entirely new alien race we haven't been introduced to, or have only been. I was just saying, we lost the feed for a second. I was saying that I know some people are speculating also that they are a completely different race we haven't seen. So we'll see. We'll see what they are. But
right.
Get a little bit better look at the ships. And they are a kind of interesting design. So not sure exactly what's going on here. Maybe some sort of a mind meld or something like that. Here's a good image of that Borg cube we saw before. We can see these ships.
Yeah.
That they do resemble the ships we just saw, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Which would mean that those are Romulan ships, because I'm pretty sure this is the Romulan experimentation area. So
yeah.
Not definitive, but this ship looks to me like the one we were just looking at. So I think the Romulan theory is a pretty good bet. So I think this is definitely the Romulan area where they're experimenting on the Borg with this destroyed, damaged cube.
Yeah.
We've got the what everybody's calling the Legolas character, right? That's kind of what everybody's nicknaming him. I don't know what his real name is. This is the Romulan elf, samurai warrior, whatever. A lot of things going on there, I guess. We'll see how this character pans out. I know the circles I've seen, a lot of people are kind of panning this character, but we'll see what he actually is like. Obviously, he's going to be very action-oriented.
Right.
We know from the previous trailer that they are going to show Picard doing fencing, which you all know Picard is supposed to be an excellent fencer.
Right.
So I think they're going to incorporate some of that into this. We'll see how that plays out.
Now, before we go too much further, that character that was on that looked like a bio bed earlier,
yeah,
I cannot get it confirmed, and it seems like a lot of people are debating whether or not this may or may not be the case. But as we were sitting here and we were studying the guy's face, it looked to me a little bit like the actor that played Bashir.
Really?
Yeah, but it looks like people are saying that it's probably not. But the guy looks enough like Bashir that it made me wonder. So
I don't see that. I don't see that personally. But wish I could mention his name, but I butcher his name all the time. So of the actor that played Bashir. He's a good actor.
Isn't it Alexander Siddig? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, I always mess up on the last name. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. So
anyhow, to me, it just looks like the guy to me reminds me of him, even if it's not him. It just looks a little bit like him. So anyhow,
no, cool. Your guess is as good as mine. Obviously, we got some romance going on. I generally don't like romance in Star Trek, to be honest with you, but we'll see how that pans out. Now we got another.
Here is the thing I keep wondering about. This is the thing I want to know. They keep showing us this looks like classic, Romulan warbird, like original series style looking era Romulan warbird. And this is what I want to, it's like who's in this? Why is this in the show? Because I was kind of hoping that if Picard's not in a Federation ship, I was kind of secretly hoping that's the ship he's in.
Right.
So.
Well, I have a pretty simple theory for this, and other fans have kind of said the same thing. First off, in Star Trek Online, if you play as the Romulan faction, the first ship you get is one of these.
Oh, okay.
So the idea is that this is the most basic Romulan ship. Okay.
Okay.
So that's one idea. the other idea that I think these ideas actually can go together. The other idea is that the Romulans are refugees, so it does make sense. They would have taken every single ship they have. You know,
Right.
we're talking like anything that's even in mothball. They would have got them back out. You know, so that's another part of it. Is I think I think that would make a lot of sense. Like it's just like, hey, we had to take every ship we have, like, you know, Battlestar Galactica, where they had the colonial movers, you know, and all that stuff.
Right.
Because this is a Battlestar Galactica scenario for the Romulans.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, those are the two things. First off, I think it might be kind of a little wink, nod to Star Trek Online. But the other part of it is I see it as the Romulans would take literally every single ship they have, and they would become highly modified. You know, they'd be modifying these ships because they're essentially a displaced people, so their ships are very important. You know, and I think they would just be taking every ship they have. That's my speculation.
Makes a lot of sense.
And of course, it brings back good memories, right? So it's
Yeah.
you know, might be some fan service, but it's some fan service that I think makes sense. And then we got an image of Picard with Riker. And this is, I think, the line that Riker says here is something along the lines of, you know, Jean-Luc, what have you gotten yourself into? You know, what are you doing? You know, so
Right.
I'm looking forward to seeing them on screen. I'm just kind of wondering if they're already giving us everything. That's my biggest concern when I see these. Is like, are they kind of just giving us all they got? Like, is this going to be all there is? You know, because clearly he's not part of the main cast, and I'm disappointed by that. I think at least one other TNG cast member should have been part of the main cast. What do you think about that, by the way?
Well, I mean, I'm of the opinion that Picard should be on a Federation starship, and it would have made sense if Riker was still in service, that they would have been aboard the Titan or whatever. Like, I mean, that's what I would have done. And, you know, you don't have to have him in every scene or whatever, you know, but it just, to me, I mean, if you, I don't know. I don't like the idea that the Federation is sidelined and they're having to go, you know, I said earlier, I don't like the idea of going rogue, you know, and not really being a part of Starfleet, because that way they can do whatever they need to do based on what this story is. But it doesn't mean the show isn't going to be good. It doesn't mean I'm not going to have any issues with it once we get into it. But just on the surface, I just would have preferred if Picard was on board a Federation starship, you know, and was working with a Federation crew. You could still have this same interesting group of people, you know, but, you know, Riker could have been there, you know, and he could have been the captain of the Titan, and they could have been working together. You know, I think that dynamic would have been great to explore. And, you know, I don't know. That's just me, though.
No, I totally agree with you. And I will say, I do feel like they're ripping off Renegades, the premise of Renegades. They've done it before. They've done it before with fan films where they have ripped stuff off. And granted, that is the problem with doing a fan film, especially of that, you know, of that scope. You know, Paramount, Viacom, whatever it is now, they have every right to take that stuff, right? They can't protect it. But I do feel that. I feel like it's, you know, kind of Firefly, they're ripping off Renegades. One thing that really disappoints me is it looks like Riker's not in Starfleet, and that to me doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't Riker still be in Starfleet? He should be an admiral, you know, like he was in All Good Things, right?
Right.
So that to me, we'll see. He could still be in Starfleet. He's just, you know, at home or something, but looks to me like he's retired too, and I don't like that. It's like, is everybody retired? Like, so it's like, I don't know. We'll see. You know, hopefully, I'm kind of hopeful that there's at least one other cast member that's going to be on that they haven't talked about, because it would make sense, because they have shown us so much of this. It's like, it would make a lot of sense to have one held back. I know there's been a lot of Michael Dorn speculation, and then obviously whether he would be the Discovery Klingon or the classic, you know, TNG Klingon. I've heard speculation there. So I am hoping at least one other person from the cast or a major character. Like, some people have been speculating Q might be in it. We'll see. I would like to have at least one more surprise, but I am really disappointed none of them are on the main cast. I think at least one of them should have been, invited to be on the main cast, just to kind of keep that connection, so it's not just fan service. It's important to the story, because it's, to me, I think this scene's going to be just fan service. I don't think it's going to really mean much to the story. You know what I mean?
Right.
That concerns me. Data, I think, is relevant to the story. I think Data is going to be relevant to the story, but Data's dead, and he's just in Picard's mind. So that's disappointing. Seven's going to be relevant to the story, and I think Hugh's going to be relevant to the story. I think we're kind of seeing that, like we've been talking about that with the Sung, with that whole storyline, with Lore setting up that premise of the Borg experimenting with Sung androids and stuff like that. So I think that those characters are going to be relevant. I really think Riker and Troy are not going to be relevant to the story. It's just going to be fan service and a fun, nice scene, which is cool. I mean, it's cool that he's on it. I told you, I went up to Jonathan Frakes personally and told him, I'm very happy for you. I'm very glad you're going to be on the show, Mm-hmm. So I like these characters to be treated with respect, I like to be like, this is what all this stuff is built on. This is why this show is so highly anticipated. It's for these guys, so
right.
I just hope it's relevant, and we'll see what his status is, but it is a nice little exchange they're having there. So, and that's it, I think. So Star Trek Picard, January 23rd. And we will be talking about it quite a bit, right, as it comes up.
Yep.
We'll be talking about the next issue of the comic book next week, and we're going to be doing a special episode when Picard comes out, right? So.
Yep, we'll be ramping up and leading up to Picard and talking about Picard as it comes out, in a lot of the same way that we're doing Mandalorian. So it seems about the time that Mandalorian is winding down, we'll start getting into Picard pretty hot and heavy. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that'll be good. And I am looking forward to seeing how the Mandalorian ends. I'm definitely looking forward to our next show regarding that. So
I am too.
All right, so we get into our main topic, or do you have something else?
No. I think we're good to go.
All right, let me get the banner up and all that good stuff. Did you want me to go ahead and share your screen?
Well, this is I just pulled this up just as a curiosity. If you want to, we can talk about it real quick. This is just a piece of Star Wars art I did. It was actually a poster for a private screening of Force Awakens that was actually done in the Prescott area. They did a very, very limited run of these just for the people who were at the special screening. So one of the things I was trying to do with this, which I thought was very important, was to kind of show the passing of the torch, the idea of the original trilogy and then these new trilogy characters. I had my own hopes and dreams for what was going to happen. And
I remember talking to you about this when you first showed me this image.
Yeah.
How cool I thought this image was, and how you incorporated Kylo Ren's lightsaber. Mm-hmm. Which I actually really dig Kylo Ren's lightsaber. I have one. I have a toy version of it, and I just remember that this kind of brings me back, to the whole anticipation with The Force Awakens, because I was very optimistic, and I was, I'll say it, I was too optimistic. I had these huge expectations, and it's funny because people compare it to like Episode 1. And I remember coming out of Episode 1, reenacting the fight with Darth Maul with my friend.
Yeah.
And I was like 22 years old or something like that, 22, 23. I was in my 20s, early 20s. And my friend and I, we started like reenacting the fight, and we got toy lightsabers and we started reenacting the fight,
Right.
And because I thought that was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. That fight is so good, the one that Episode 1 ends on, that lightsaber duel. And man, the contrast. I went with a big group. I went with a big group to see the Force Awakens, and the main friend who organized it, he was dressed up as Anakin from Revenge of the Sith,
Mm-hmm.
and his wife, who's very pretty, was dressed as Leia, and it was like this big fun group. You know, we all went together. We had reserved seats, and I had some friends from work that were there. I mean, it was like a big deal. And I remember we all just came out of that movie theater like, what the hell was that? You know what I mean? Like, we were just like, you know, these were hardcore Star Wars fans, you know? But this really takes me back to kind of before that, before actually seeing the film and the anticipation I had. And this is such an awesome movie. You did such a great job with this.
Oh, thanks. I just thought it'd be fun to show and continue having kind of original art, you know, for the show. So,
well, I love this image, and like I said, I love the way you incorporate Kylo Ren's lightsaber that way. It's really well done, and yeah, this just takes me back to when I was so optimistic about the Disney taking over Star Wars, and I was so optimistic about this new trilogy, about seeing all these guys back together.
Right.
Never happened. Never happened. So
I imagined, I know when I was creating this poster, I imagined that Luke, Han, and Leia were going to be those elder statesman characters, you know, from the original trilogy films, you know. So instead of Mon Mothma, who we have, you know, not much connection to, you know, it's Leia, you know. Instead of General Nadine, it's Han Solo, you know what I mean? And I thought that, and I honestly thought that was the role they were going to play, you know. I thought Luke was training, you know, the next generation of Jedi, and you know, Luke was the one character I figured probably wouldn't make it through the 3 films just because of the nature of him being a Jedi Master and helping to try and bring the Jedi back. In my mind, I imagine he would be targeted essentially for assassination, you know, by, you know, the whatever the remnants of the Sith were that existed. So, and again, I went into Force Awakens with no spoilers, but in my mind, that's what I was imagining, is that our original trilogy characters were going to be around for all 3 films. We were going to see them interact with each other because they were going to be the leaders, you know, the older experienced warriors that we saw in the original series of films that we didn't have a connection to. But these characters we do have a connection to. So when one of them steps up and says something, we understand the gravitas and the importance of what they're saying. And if they say the situation is dire, we know that they've seen enough action. We've been along with them that they truly know the situation is dire, you know? So that's what I originally envisioned when I put this together. That's kind of what I was thinking was going to happen. But no, yeah, this all unfolded much differently than we all expected. So I was going to read the just here real quick for Rise of Skywalker. I was going to read the plot synopsis here. Of course, The Rise of Skywalker is directed by J.J. Abrams. The screenplay is by J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio. And the synopsis reads as: the surviving resistance faces the First Order once more as Rey, Finn, and Poe Dameron journey continues. With the power and knowledge of a generation behind them, the final battle commences. Okay. So we should definitely, we're going to be talking spoilers here as we get further into it. However, here at the beginning, we definitely want to talk about our general impressions of Rise of Skywalker, and want to stay away from too many spoilers. So tell me, Eric, what was your general impression after having seen Rise of Skywalker?
My general impression. Well, I wasn't happy. I mean, that's all I can say. I will say this: this is probably something that really kind of concerns me, and I've heard other fans talk about this. I want to be really angry about this film. I want to be really incensed and angry about it, but I can't muster it. I've gotten to the point where I don't really care, you know? And that's probably the most disappointing thing for me about this entire. You can't really judge this movie without putting it with the other 2 films. It's a trilogy, and this is the end of the trilogy, you know? It's the last movie. It's the end. It's the end of the story.
Right.
And it was just so unsatisfying to me. And like I said, the thing that really disappoints me is like I can't even get like at least The Last Jedi, I was angry. I was upset, you know? I was really angry. So at least there's passion there, you know. I didn't feel any of that with this film. I did go with my kids, and they enjoyed it. They all liked it. Okay.
Okay.
They like Ray. They like BB-8. I didn't realize one of my kids is a Raylo person, which I guess I need to work on my parenting skills. I didn't know that. I didn't know one of my daughters was a Raylo person. I had no idea. That kind of shocked me. But yeah, it's just I love Star Wars, and I'm very passionate about Star Wars, but I didn't feel any passion in this movie. And I think one of the big problems with this movie is that it's just not well put together as a film. It's kind of like this mishmash of all these different things, and you can tell JJ was trying to appease like everybody. I think he was even trying to address the fandom menace.
Right.
I think he was trying to please them. Trying to fix the mess that The Last Jedi is. And you have to talk about this in context, because I think, even from my perspective of someone that didn't like The Force Awakens, okay? Told you how I felt when I came out of it. I do understand that there were certain things that were set up in that movie, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Rian Johnson came in and destroyed all those things. Killing Snoke. I mean, that's a huge thing. He basically destroyed the story in the middle. And we wound up in a situation where it's like, okay, where is this going? All right. The resistance, okay? The resistance. It just makes me laugh. It's the rebellion. Is in a dire situation. They all fit on the Millennium Falcon at the end of The Last Jedi. Okay. And almost immediately, even though they're clearly in a sort of weakened state, they're clearly on the run. But immediately when we see the resistance, they've got ships again. They've got troops now. I mean, they've got all these things. It's like, come on, You're not going to explain any of this, are you? And it's kind of like the whole movie was like that. It was like this. To me, it was just a very disjointed mess. It's like, I didn't think that technically, visually, there were issues with The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. I thought The Force Awakens was kind of boring because it didn't really have any new designs. And it was very kind of an understated film in terms of special effects and stuff like that. They kept it very basic,
mm-hmm.
and there wasn't a whole lot of new stuff. The Last Jedi had a little bit more, because you had a little bit of a rebel fleet. They showed some more of the First Order, that kind of stuff. So there was a little bit more. They had the bombers, they had some new designs. So visually, in terms of special effects, the way that the films were put together, I don't have a lot of criticism of either of those films, other than, like I said, with The Force Awakens. I felt that there was nothing new in it. There literally was nothing new. The X-Wings looked like old X-Wings, Right. They just changed them a little bit. The TIE fighters look like TIE fighters, just changed them a little bit. This film, though, I felt was technically a mess. I felt it was a badly put together film. I actually will go after the quality of the film. The score, I'm sad to say, did not grab me. There was no big Imperial March moment, like the first time you hear the Imperial March, or the big
the walkers.
No, I was talking about the score. I mean, there was no big moment as far as a piece that really hit me and was iconic to me,
right. That's why I mentioned the walkers, because the walkers is a very specific, musical cue when they kind of show up on screen in Empire. So yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah. Okay, now I see where you're going. And I keep forgetting the piece, the big piece in Episode 1. What is it?
Duel of the Fates.
Duel of the Fates. God, I love Duel of the Fates. It's frustrating me. I couldn't remember the name of it, because I love that piece. That piece sticks out to me so much. And it's so good the way they use it, so epic. I didn't feel any of that. So, I have to say, I guess the main takeaway is I was very underwhelmed. So what's your take, Dave? What's your take?
So here's my overall impression of Rise of Skywalker. And my opinion is a little different than yours, and it's a little different from my wife's. My wife's opinion, after watching the film, I said, "What did you think?" She said, "Meh." That was her entire review.
There you go.
Now here's my review, my overall impression of the film. I didn't hate it. There were some sequences I kind of liked. I thought there was some very interesting ideas that could have made for a compelling trilogy of films if that's what they'd actually done. I think that it is a visual spectacle. I think if you're a Star Wars fan and you've been along for the ride up until now, if you're curious to go see the movie, obviously go see the movie. Like I said, there was things I liked about it and things I didn't like about it. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it like the way that I really do not like Last Jedi. But it's not a home run. And here's the two things I dislike most about this film. I hate that in the marketing they tried to sell this as basically the end of these 9 films, because this is just the end of a failed experiment for these 3 trilogy films in my mind.
Absolutely.
And I hate that they tried to sell it this way, because I don't feel it really reflects very well on, ironically enough, Lucas's trilogy. I feel like Lucas's trilogy is a stronger series of films in a lot of ways. Jar Jar and the potty humor, whatever aside, I mean, I just feel like those films, they do more to expand and build the universe. And I feel like there's a lot more interesting material there. And I feel like that these films, while, like I said, this last one, there's some things I like, just like there's things I like about Force Awakens. I do feel like that it just really bothers me they sold this as the end of these 9 films, because I don't feel like it is. And here's basically my takeaway for all 3 films. It feels like that if you've ever done this before, sometimes as a creative exercise, what they'll do is they have one person start a story and they pass it to the next person to continue it on. And then they pass it to a third person to continue it on, and a fourth person. And then eventually it comes back to the person who started it, and then that person has to end it. That's what this film felt like to me.
That is a great analogy. That is a great analogy, Dave. That is an awesome analogy, in my opinion. I mean,
right. And so, and that's basically what you get. So, if you watch the last 2 films, that's why I said, if you watch the last 2 films, you're curious to see how they try and wrap this all up. It's an interesting film to watch. There's going to be some things you like, and there's going to be some things you hate. The film had in it the 2 things I most wanted to see. So in that context, I overall, I'm going to say, I was very happy to get to see those things on screen, even if it was very brief. And we'll get more into that into the
and I want to guess what those things are when we get into spoilers, because I think I know what they are, and I want to guess what those 2 things were that you liked.
So here is the way I would because here's the thing. It's hard for me to recommend this film unless you're curious about it. If you're curious about it, go see it. If you're not curious about it, if you didn't really like Last Jedi and you're not sure about it, if you're already subscribed to Disney Plus, just wait. But if you're a Star Wars fan and you like the other 2 films, or if you like the sci-fi spectacle nature of it, I think there's some fun things to be seen on the big screen with this film. And I think it'll give it a little bit more scope and a little bit more punch. So it does warrant going and seeing the film if you are interested in it. But if you're not interested in it, if you just wait, it'll be on Disney Plus a little bit. You'll be able to rent it, and you can watch it, in that way, if that's, how you want to see it. It's just hard for me to wholeheartedly, all out, to the wall recommend the film. I do have some friends I recommend to go see the movie because I do think they'll enjoy a lot of aspects of it. But as a general review, I'm just going to say if you're thinking you can wait, just wait. After having just seen it, I was probably more on the side of go see it for the visual spectacle of it. But the more I've thought about the film, my opinions are kind of like, if you're thinking wait, just wait.
You know, I have to say this. I mean, I'm very disappointed in the visual spectacle of it because I thought it was just too much. This idea of like a screen full of capital ships. I mean, it looked ridiculous to me. Really, it just looked ridiculous to me. It was too much. I wanted to find it for the show, but I didn't get it. But do you remember that there was somebody that took the original trailer for the Force Awakens and he made the special edition version, making fun of George Lucas? And the main thing about that was more. Like he kept showing like more TIE fighters, more aliens, more, right? Because that's kind of what the special editions did. It was just like the people, there's like that classic scene where like there's actually like this big alien thing walking by when they're on Tatooine, and actually like you can't see what's going on. And it's like, why did you do that? You know what I mean? And I actually, of the special editions, my favorite is actually the original one of the Star Wars, because I like the Jabba the Hutt scene, and I like that we get more scenes with Biggs. But that scene in particular, that one people hate because this big alien monster thing walks right in the frame and you can't see what's going on. It's like, why did you do that? But anyway, this person did this fan trailer. I recommend it. I wanted to kind of show it for the show to punctuate what I'm talking about. But the main idea of this trailer that he made was that, George Lucas just put too much stuff. It was too much stuff going on. No, George Lucas didn't. This guy did. Okay. That is this film to a T. I mean, it's ridiculous how many ships they show on screen sometimes. It just becomes like, 1 gajillion ships, It's like an insane like number that you made up, It doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. Having the screen filled with all these ships that are supposed to be kind of like, important and kind of specialized and everything like that, it doesn't impress me just because you put more of them on the screen. Just because you fill the screen with Star Destroyers, it doesn't impress me. We've all seen that in the trailer. The scene of all these Star Destroyers. I didn't like it when I saw it in the trailer. I thought it was going to be too much. And when I saw it on the big screen, I really hated it. It was too much. And so, yeah, I would say I agree with you in the sense that, yeah, I would not recommend that you go to the theater and see this and waste your money on it if you have Disney Plus. I would just wait. Get Disney Plus, just wait and watch it there. Just because of that aspect. Like, I almost got a headache sometimes watching this film. That's kind of the problem that I had. It was just like you could totally tell what JJ was trying to do, and he had this philosophy, obviously, that more is better. Hey, you like one destroyer, you'll love like 10,000 of them, right? And I'm like, no, I don't, because it's ridiculous. So I had a problem with that. So me personally, I don't even think that I would recommend it as far as like the spectacle on the big screen, like, because I usually do that. Like we talked about Joker in our Joker review. I definitely advocate for you to go watch that on the big screen because every scene in the Joker to me was like a painting. It was just beautiful. It was so well crafted. And that's, that's like an 80s retro. I mean, we're talking about scenes where a guy is in his apartment building and they're more interesting than this stuff to me. To me, it kind of just overwhelmed me. And I think a lot of people have that same reaction to it.
Right. Okay, so that's going to be our overall impressions. So let's go ahead and get into some spoiler talk now. So we're going to get into spoilers for the film. and we're going to go probably pretty knee deep into spoilers here. So if you're watching at home, listening at home, whatever, if you haven't seen Rise of Skywalker and you want to avoid spoilers, now would be the time to obviously pause it. I'm not going to say go watch the film and come back because that'd be kind of difficult since it's in theaters. But obviously at this point, you're probably going to want to stop listening or watching, see the film and maybe come back and review this episode at a later date to see if your opinions match up with ours. So let me go first, Eric, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to talk about the single idea that I love most from this film. And then
I can't guess what it is.
And then I'm going to explain why I like it. And then I'm going to explain why I feel like it was horribly misused. Okay. My favorite idea that comes out of this film is the idea of these Sith zealots. This growing group that worships the idea of the Sith as ultimate power, almost kind of like Satanists, right? That follow this dark Lord and believe that through him, worshiping him, supporting him, doing his bidding is going to give them power and influence. And what I love the idea of these Sith zealots that in the film are the reason that Palpatine is still alive. Okay. It's almost like Palpatine's been kept alive because these Sith zealots refuse to give up the fact that their time has ended. And I kind of like that idea. And I really think that that's genius. But here's why I think it was misused in this film. It should have been established in Force Awakens. We should have started with this idea in Force Awakens and carried it forward. Like, for example, there's this new Imperial commander that's introduced in this film. He's kind of he's almost like a throwback character to the kind of Imperial commanders that we had in the original trilogy of films. Why wasn't this guy in Force Awakens? Because this guy seems very much to be a Sith zealot. And the idea of these Sith zealots, I mean, these could have been former Imperial commanders. These could have been former, governors of these different, worlds within the Empire. I mean, there's something really awesome about this idea. I like the idea of the stadium full of the Sith zealots. You know what I mean? Waiting to see the culmination of what they wanted to see happen, and Palpatine come back to the throne, either through Rey or through his own power, and basically bend the universe, and put them on their knees because all of them are going to benefit from that. Like, I love that idea. I think that idea is powerful and interesting, but I hate the way they did it because they should have started introducing this idea back with Force Awakens. These ideas of these Sith relics. Why didn't we start that with Force Awakens? And the reason we didn't is because this, again, is like that thing you do in school where one person starts the story and they hand it to the other person, and then it gets back to the guy who had the original idea, and he hates what the other people added to it, and he tries to somehow bring it back to his original idea and end it the way he originally wanted to end it, even though that's not what the story is anymore. That's what I hate. I think this Sith zealot idea is really interesting, but I just feel like that it's unfortunate that they tried to shoehorn it in the last film.
Well, I want to talk about that character. First of all, I thought his name was weird. General Pride is that character you're talking about, General Pride. Which right. I was like, that's really cheesy name. Okay, I'm just going to say that straight off the bat. But anyway, I was fascinated by that character to an extent of exactly the lines you're talking about. Here's the issue, okay? Like you said, that sort of exercise that people do, which is a great writing exercise. I'm not going to knock that exercise. That's a great way to learn how to write and to do all that kind of stuff. It's a terrible way to do films, and you see the result. I don't think this idea of the Imperial Zealots was ever there, ever. I think it's something they came up with after the fact when they decided they were going to put Palpatine, that they were going to basically jam Palpatine into this saga, Because I don't think there was any intention to bring Palpatine back when they started with The Force Awakens. And I don't think there was any intention to bring him back with The Last Jedi. There is not one single indication on the previous two films that they ever intended to bring Palpatine back.
Right.
not one. And that's what you were asking the question. Well, why didn't we see General Pride before? Because General Pride didn't exist before. This is something that JJ, and his people came up with after the fact, when they realized whatever it was that they actually wanted to do was destroyed by Rian Johnson because he killed Snoke. That's my theory. Okay, when Rian Johnson killed Snoke, he destroyed whatever idea J.J. Abrams originally had. That's what I think happened. And that's why I think we don't see this. We don't see General Pride. We don't see this Imperial Zealot, which, by the way, I think that there's a bit of a Mandalorian connection here. I think that the Moff kind of is supposed to represent those Imperial Zealots, right? That's what I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I think this idea that they introduced in this film, I love this idea. And I hate that this wasn't the undercurrent behind these three films, because I think that the idea of these Sith artifacts that have a history, that when Rey touches them, that through the Force she experiences something that's happened, some horrible ritual, something they were used in. This idea, I mean, I really think in this film they touched upon what these three films could have been about. It's just a shame that they didn't just treat this like a writer's room and actually break the story, at least if they're going to pass it around to people, because I feel like that idea, I think, is really interesting. And I think the film still could have ended with, Palpatine kind of in a similar state where he's on this arm and he's, still kind of there, because they still want to somehow take his power and channel it into someone else so that they can still, through this being, rule the universe. Like these ideas, a lot of the stuff with Palpatine I thought was interesting. It's unfortunate it's in this film, and it's unfortunate that it was used in this way, because I think these ideas could have made for a very interesting undercurrent and leading us to a villain, whether Snoke turned out to actually be a deformed clone of Palpatine. You know what I mean? Or
right. Which is kind of implied in is somewhat implied in the film, but they don't tell us that. So
and I think that was probably JJ's original idea. I think that's what he was intending to do with Snoke. I think Snoke is supposed to be a deformed version of Palpatine. Now,
that's a great idea, but I'm not sure that that's what they were doing. I think again the problem is the problem is, Dave, that again I think when they killed Snoke in The Last Jedi, whatever the story was that JJ had was destroyed.
And I agree.
All this stuff was made up after the fact as a response to what Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi. He screwed it up so bad. They had to come up with a completely new narrative, and it doesn't fit with the rest of the movies.
Right. Well, I totally agree with that. And then I'm going to throw out my two favorite things that I liked. Okay. I like the idea that Rey is related to Palpatine. I just kind of like that idea. I like it. I thought that I'm glad that Chewbacca didn't die in the scene where her Force lightning emerges. But if that had been a different sideline character and the character had really died, and we had seen that she was basically on that tipping point, you know what I mean, because of her anger of being, because she's by genetics and birth, she's so in tune with the dark side of the Force that it just comes out of her. I like that idea. I mean, I really do. And that's another one of these things I think is interesting.
Do you think that idea fits with the previous two films and the way she was characterized in the previous two films?
No, it does not. But I'm saying that would have been an interesting thing to explore in these three films if they'd handled it differently. See, that's what I'm talking about. It's like I think that these ideas they hit in this last film, I think, are interesting enough that the films could have been different enough from the other Star Wars films. We could have explored the Force in a completely different way. They could have still done some similar things that they did in these films. But no, I don't think that we led there. I think this is definitely whoever, I know Chris Terrio is credited as writing it, maybe it was Chris Terrio, whoever it was, I think these are really interesting ideas. And I know a lot of people are pointing to the Rey as related to Palpatine idea as just pure fan service. Whatever. I still think it's an interesting idea. It's all about how you explore the concept, how you evolve it, and how you basically get to the resolution of the story.
Exactly. It's all about how you get there. Now, personally, I don't like Rey being a Palpatine. I think it's ridiculous. Palpatine was never shown to even have a girlfriend or a love interest or anything like that. You always kind of assume that he was a very solitary individual because he's incredibly evil, and that's not his thing. He's not out there seducing women and stuff like that because that's not his priority. His priority is power. That's all he cares about. And also, there was that implication that he had some knowledge from Darth Plagueis on how to create life. In other words, he didn't need to reproduce the way that normal humans do. He didn't need to have a son. He didn't need to have daughters. He didn't need to do any of that because he had that information with Darth Plagueis of how to create life. There was that implication that he created Anakin. There was definitely implication that that's what happened. Although my understanding is they've said that's not the case, but I think that was clearly implied in the Lucas version. Okay, but the thing is, her being a Palpatine, there's two issues. First of all, one is either you like the idea of a new character being, a Palpatine, or you don't. Okay, that's a personal preference. You like that idea, I don't. That's just a personal preference. But the other side of this is, in terms of the character, of what we saw on screen in the first two movies, there was no hint of her having any dark side in her at all. She was just pure as snow. There was no development. I could never understand the fans that wanted her to switch to the dark side, because I was like, we haven't seen anything like that in these previous two films. She was always good. Everything she did was good. Everything she did was perfect. That's why you get the Mary Sue allegations. She's perfect. How could she possibly have any desire to be for the dark side? I think that was all added when they decided to bring Palpatine in and make her a Palpatine. And to me, I just was not convinced of it at all. To me, it was just like, where was this in the other two films? Where did she ever show any propensity to be evil or like this in the other two films?
Well, there is that one scene in Last Jedi where when Luke is giving her first lesson, she immediately goes to the dark side, and Luke has a hard time pulling her out of it. But I'm just saying, I think the idea is interesting. You know what I mean? The way that they explored it, I think, is unfortunate. But I do think the idea of this concept handled in a slightly different manner, I think could have been really interesting. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, I think there's some really interesting ideas here in this film that if they'd been explored differently across these trilogy of films, it could have been a really powerful and interesting conclusion in this film. And we could be having a completely different conversation. It could have been the exploration of the dark side and in a sense that I think a lot of people had originally hoped, with the original prequels. But like I said, unfortunately, the way that they went about it is just unfortunate. But I do like the concept and the idea of Rey being related to Palpatine. And I think that scene where her and Kylo were kind of using the Force against each other, fighting over that shuttle, and then the Force lightning emerging, in a different context, that scene could have been really cool and really interesting.
I hated that scene. I hated it. I was like, where is this coming from? And now she's using Force lightning. Who taught her how to use Force lightning? Luke didn't know how to use Force lightning. Leia didn't know how to use Force lightning. Well, I think everybody has Force lightning now, but I mean, that's a problem. There's nothing is built upon anything else in this movie. It just all kind of comes out of nowhere.
Well, all I was going to say is that I think the Force lightning is a Sith ability, one. And then number two, I just think that it's her anger. It's because
who taught her how to do that? What Sith taught her how to do Force lightning?
I think it's just an outgrowth of her anger. she got so angry and
I don't buy
so
that. I don't buy that at all. To quote Han Solo from The Force Awakens, that's not how the Force works, sir. I mean, that is not how the Force works. That's one of the reasons I have so many problems with this from a lore perspective. I mean, they've done terrible things with the Force in these three Disney movies. Terrible. Doesn't make any sense anymore.
All I'm saying is explore differently. I like the idea.
No, I get that. Like I said, that one part of it is like there's a personal preference factor, and I get that. I can see that. I totally can see that. If you like the idea of her being a Palpatine, well, you like the idea of her being a Palpatine. My main argument is that there was no indication of that in the previous two films, and I guarantee you that was not the intention when they were doing the previous two films. That was not the intention. In fact, Rian Johnson obviously said very plainly, she's a nobody, which, you know what? I thought that was good. And the reason I thought that was good was because she says that in The Force Awakens. When they ask her who she is, she says, I'm no one. That to me is good writing, because that's basically her telling you that's who I am. I'm nobody. I'm not anybody's daughter. I'm just someone that's attuned with the Force, like thousands of other people in this world, because we know that's the way the Force works. The Jedi were going out trying to find people that were attuned to the Force. That's how the Force works. That's consistent. She just happens to be really good at it. She's not a Skywalker. She's not an Obi-Wan. She's not a Palpatine. She's no one. That to me is good writing, because she said the line in The Force Awakens, and that was always my argument to people. Hey, she told us who she was. She's no one. That's good writing. But because this thing got so messed up by the previous film, and because any ideas that JJ and his people had in the first film were destroyed in the second film, there's no, they just had to kind of totally redo the story. It doesn't fit with the other two films. It doesn't fit.
So here's my last thing that I really liked in this film. It's very brief, but I love that scene of Luke and Leia training.
That was the one I was going to guess.
Yeah,
because I wanted to guess what you liked, and that's what I would have guessed. I was going to guess that's what you were like, because you've talked about that. I think every time we've talked about this movie, you've talked about
right, and I love that scene. I think it's really cool. In all honesty, that's more of what I would have liked to have seen out of these films. Is just the emergence of the Jedi again. And instead of still seeing the Jedi in the same state that they've been in since forever, I would have liked to have seen, Luke and Leia training and a new generation of Jedi emerging, and just a completely different thing. But I do like this idea of the Sith zealot and being behind everything and as a group, because they're so hungry for power, pulling the strings and orchestrating everything that leads to kind of a similar ending like we had in this film, but a completely different two other films that lead up to this point. Because I think there's some very interesting ideas in the film, but those are the things I like. I'm going to talk just briefly about the thing that I dislike the most. I don't like this weird Force connection thing where they're like grabbing and pulling stuff. Like, I'm on a different planet than you. I'm going to yank this necklace off of your neck.
That was terrible.
That
was terrible. That was like a cartoon.
And then I hated that scene where they started fighting, and it's like, how are they fighting? Like I told someone, I said the scene where they're fighting on the piece of the Star Destroyer, not the Star Destroyer, the Death Star on that moon of Endor or whatever. I mean, when they're fighting, when that scene in the trailer, which everyone's seen, where Finn's running across the top and he's screaming at Rey, I thought that they were going to pull back and we were going to realize that Kylo wasn't really there and Rey was fighting this vision of him. And it's like she's just out there risking her life for no good reason whatsoever, right? And Finn's trying to pull her back, like, he's not even here. Stop, you know what I mean? Like, I thought that's what was going to happen. So the idea that in the film, he's really there, which of course he was, but it just, I don't know. It just got so confusing. This whole, like, are you there? Are you not there? you're on the ship. I'm gonna yank the. We're gonna actually knock this thing from where you are to where I am, and then I'll know where you are. That's just. I hated that. I hated that. It took an idea from Last Jedi that on the surface of it, I thought I was kind of okay with, and then by the end of this film, I realized I don't like that at all.
No, I thought that was ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. It's just stupid as far as I'm concerned. The what they've done to the Force, I don't know if you can ever fix that now. What they've done to the Force in these movies. I mean, they have made the Force just complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. That scene where I'm surprised you didn't say this was one of your biggest disappointments. My biggest disappointment actually was the Knights of Ren. That was one of the few things I was still looking forward to was the Knights of Ren.
Were they in this movie?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I didn't mention them. It's like they're not even in this movie. And by the time we actually see them fight, they're fighting supposedly their master. What is this? They didn't even have a brief conversation about, why have you turned from us, brother? Come back.
This is some of the worst writing I've ever seen. I mean, it's just terrible. It's terrible. But I wanted to get back to your point. The fight with Kylo Ren when he is confronted by the Knights of Ren, he does that thing where he pulls the lightsaber, out of thin air because Rey has force transported it to him. That literally reminded me of like the cheesiest, most kiddie cartoon. It looked like a cartoon to me. Like you just pull things out of nothing. You know what I mean? Like they do in cartoons where they like pull the hammer and hit the other character, and they get the hammer from nowhere. It just pops into their hand.
Right.
That's what it looked like to me. That's what it reminded me of. I thought it was ridiculous. And this is supposed to be like a tense scene. At first he's the Knights of Ren are kind of getting the better. He's getting beat by the Knights of Ren because he doesn't have a lightsaber, which of course is also stupid. Why do he throw his lightsaber away? But that, you can make the same argument with Luke in Return of the Jedi. Why the hell did he throw his lightsaber away? But yeah, I mean, I just didn't understand that whole force teleportation thing is that's just dumb. I think it's just dumb. And what it does is it makes all these new force abilities, what they do is they basically take the stakes away. And we haven't even talked about the big one that people are talking about, which apparently a lot of people are saying this is the reason that The Mandalorian came on before the movie came out, was because in The Mandalorian, we saw Baby Yoda heal Carl Weathers' character. And a lot of people are saying the reason they did that was because people love Baby Yoda. And so when Baby Yoda did that, people were cool with it. I'm one of them. I thought that was cool. I was like, that's cool. The problem is there were a lot of hardcore fans that were saying, wait a second, force healing is not a thing. If they had force healing, what about this situation? What about that situation? And now there's like stuff like exponentially where people are coming up with all these different situations being like, why didn't they force heal this guy? Why didn't they force heal in this situation? Why didn't they force heal in this context?
Right.
They made it so ridiculous. And not only did we get the force healing, because Rey introduces the power, early in the movie where she like heals that slug creature.
Right.
And later on, Kylo Ren brings her back from the dead. I mean, this is ridiculous. Where are the stakes now? So apparently, if you don't instantly turn into a Force ghost, because I was seeing that when I saw Kylo Ren bring Rey back, when I saw that scene, I was like, okay, so why doesn't she just bring him back if he's gonna die?
Right.
Well, they figured that out and said, oh, he's gonna just turn into a Force ghost like Obi-Wan. He's just gonna disappear. So she can't revive him. That was like the one thing I think they thought of and said, okay, he's just gonna disappear. Right. But I was like, it takes the stakes away. So now Rey apparently sacrificed herself, right? If we had stayed with it, and that to me, that's an ending. That's a real ending. The hero died. That's bold. She saved them. That's something. No, but Kylo Ren's gonna come out of this ditch. Palpatine did it too. So why can't he come out of this ditch that he was thrown into?
The dark
So he
side.
comes out of the ditch and he brings her back to life. I mean, that's just it does terrible things to the Force, in my opinion, because it's like there are no stakes. It's just like you basically have the powers of a god.
Yeah,
that's never what the Force was supposed to be.
Yeah, I just the Force healing thing, they just overused the hell out of it. I mean, if they had put more limits on it, it could have kind of worked, But the way they use it in this, it seems like well, why did anybody have to die? Like, I mean, like you brought up, it doesn't work in the way that they used it.
We lost the feed for a second.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say the way in which they use it in the film, I feel like it doesn't work because it does open that can of worms of like, well, there's all kinds of people they should have healed. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. This film's got a lot of problems.
I will concede to you.
And see this healing thing, in The Mandalorian, I'm okay with it because we've always been told that Yoda's species is more in tune with the Force than other people because genetically of the species that he is or whatever, right? I mean, his species could be, quote unquote, the chosen people of the Force, right? We don't know. And maybe that's why they're so in tune. So when Baby Yoda did it, and honestly, even when Rey did it the first time, I kind of took it as, she's so powerful in the Force to begin with. Well, maybe she does have that ability. And then I thought that's what Palpatine was trying to take from her. But then when Kylo turned around and used it, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Anybody can do this? Because when Kylo
brought her back from the dead. He didn't just heal her; she was dead.
It's like, well, then anybody can do it, right? Like, and then it turns into, like you said, it's like, well, why did anybody have to die in any of the Star Wars movies? There's a Jedi standing around, that doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's fiction. I get it. But this stuff, some of this new Force stuff, I agree with you. It's too much. It's way too much. But for me, the thing that drove me the most nuts was the weird Force transporting thing. I couldn't take that. When he yanked the necklace off of her, I'm like going, wait a minute, how did he just do that? They've never been able to do that before. Like I thought, I thought he was gonna see the necklace on her and say, you're at planet such and such because I've taken part in that festival when I was training at the Jedi Academy, But then when he yanked it off of her and someone like, CSI scanned it and told him where they were, I was just like, okay, all right, whatever. I did not like, because it literally took something that bothered me in The Last Jedi and like turned it to like if you have a dial that goes from 1 to 10, it's like turning it to 30. Because especially when they started fighting with the lightsabers, I'm like, what? Wait a minute, this is getting really confusing. He isn't there, but he could kill her. Like, it just gets in this weird thing. It's like, well, why didn't Vader just kill Luke when he was on the Millennium Falcon flying away in the first movie? Why didn't he just force project himself, transport his essence into that scene, take out the lightsaber, and just kill Luke where he's sat, or Leia for that matter, or anybody? Like, if that ability exists in the Star Wars universe, then it negates almost everything that's happened in all the films, because there's no reason for a physical face-to-face conflict anymore when you can kill someone, via telepathy. It just doesn't. I don't get it.
No, I don't get it either. I think it's ridiculous. It makes the Force into it just makes it silly. Just makes it silly. Before Force powers were treated with this sort of like they were like something that happened, very sparingly. You know what I mean? And It was like a big deal. when somebody used their force powers, you know? And now it's just like they're basically gods. They're basically gods.
Well, and it takes, like, for example, one of the things I've missed in these films is I would have liked more Jedi and more Sith, because I want to see more lightsaber battles, right? Where
Right.
you've got, just something more attuned to what we actually saw in the prequels, like a return to that. Because if the Jedi have reemerged, as quote unquote the title Return of the Jedi tells us, there should be enough of them running around by the time that we get to, because I kept thinking that by Last Jedi or whatever, there'd be more lightsaber users and more force sensitive people running around by that time. The Jedi would have reemerged in several different instances, in different ways. They just weren't being trained the same way that Luke was training people. But the fact that it's still this isolated thing, and then you see this level of power that people are using, it's like, then it gets even weirder. It's like, why aren't there more people following the tenets of the Jedi and the Sith? Why aren't there more people seeking this power if it enables you to do this kind of stuff? Like, we should have, quasi Sith users all over the place if they, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Well, why don't the Knights of Ren have any force powers?
Exactly.
What the hell is that? I mean, that's not even consistent with their own continuity. They're basically giving the force to whoever, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, so how come the Knights of Ren don't have lightsabers and they can't use the force?
And how are the Knights of Ren able to defeat Kylo if he can bring someone back to the dead through the force, and all they have are like axes and maces and stuff?
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Like, how does that even make sense?
It doesn't make any sense. That's my point. It's like
that. Yeah.
And the Knights of Ren was the one thing I was hoping was going to be cool in this. That was the one expectation I had, was that, they're finally going to do something with the Knights of Ren. They're finally going to do something with them. We're going to see them. We're going to at least get some inkling of their power. And no, apparently they are just a bunch of fanboys that like to dress up and they carry ancient weapons. What?
And they have a horrible emissions problem with their starship.
Yeah. Did you notice that?
They're going to cause climate change in the galaxy with all those emissions.
What was that, by the way? What was that supposed to be? Like the ship's damaged or something? From what? I didn't understand that.
Every time I saw that ship start moving forward with all that emissions and smoke and stuff coming off them, I kept expecting Captain Planet to show up out of nowhere and beat the hell out of them or something. So, anyhow, those are the things that bothered me the most. With an honorable mention for that scene where Palpatine threw up the lightning and took out all the ships. Because I'm like, well, if Palpatine can do that now, why couldn't he have done a version of that in Return of the Jedi? Why didn't he just, when the battle looked like it might even kind of go sideways, why didn't Palpatine go, oh no, this is not going to happen? Zap all the damn ships and knock out all their electrical systems. EMP force ability, which I think probably comes from some video game somewhere. But anyhow, yeah. There was just all this stuff that there was just a lot of this movie. There was part of it I was confused. I was like, is Kylo in? Is he there or is he not there? What is going on? It's a couple of scenes, right? Literally the scene where they were fighting on in his quarters, which look ironically a lot like the Imperial Blockade Runner, which that didn't make any sense. Why would his quarters look like the Imperial Blockade Runner? Anyhow, so I mean, I like the interiors of the Imperial Blockade Runner, but I don't know why Kylo Ren, a devotee of the Sith, would basically live in a replica of the Imperial Blockade Runner. It makes no sense. Yeah. Especially when he didn't even establish that he grew up running around the hallways of the Imperial Blockade Runner. It makes no sense. When they were fighting, I was confused because I was like, is he there? And then I realized, oh, he's not there. And I was like, what are they doing? Like, it got really confusing to me, this weird force transportation thing. Um, it just, and I just, it's a mess. It's just a real mess. And but like I said, there were things I liked. There were ideas I really thought was interesting, and there were a few scenes that I kind of enjoyed. And they weren't always action scenes. I like the snow trooper guys like going like from door to door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were some designs in the film I really liked. I while I hate the way that they become airborne, I really like the design of the jetpack stormtrooper guys, like the look of their helmet and everything. Like I thought that design was really cool, and I like the snow trooper looking guys. There's some visually there's some things I thought, oh, that's really kind of cool looking. And even though I might like to have it as a toy and sit it on my desk, the stuff they did with it was not very good. But I did like that scene on that world, because that world looked completely different, and it looked almost kind of medieval, like a place we'd never kind of been before, and them going door to door. There was a lot of things I'm like going, this as a scene in a different movie would be interesting. Because it reminded me of, you would see like in the World War II movies, where the Nazis are going door to door looking for the spies, or the traitors. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. And I've been watching a lot of World War II stuff, like World War II in color. I've been watching Age of Tanks and stuff on Netflix. And I've been really thinking it's a shame that they didn't go back to a lot of this kind of material where Lucas took a lot of his original inspiration. It took inspiration from that instead of necessarily taking sort of like the wrong inspiration from existing Star Wars stuff. Because here's the thing. By the end of this movie, I felt like if you're going to do the whole Kylo and Rey thing, that they're connected to the Force, and you want to do this whole familial thing, why didn't you guys just do the story of the twins, Han and Leia's twins? Why did we have to do this?
Yeah.
Like, couldn't you just adapt those novels if that's the story you wanted? If you want to tell a story about family.
But that's not the story they wanted to do. That's the point. First of all, I don't know how much of the story they actually even knew they wanted to do. I don't think they had a total plan. I think that there was no plan. There was no plan. But there were probably ideas. There were probably some ideas of where the story could go. So, that's the thing. Nothing is built upon from the previous films. It's just like each film is kind of like its own thing that has the characters in it, and there's just no consistency.
Yeah,
it is the most poorly written saga I think ever. You know what I mean? Like, it is so badly written, and it's because there was no plan. There was no George Lucas, who at least was the final word, and could be like, well, this is direction I want to go in. I don't want to do this. I do want to do this. There was no one doing that. I mean, we know Kathleen Kennedy is an idiot. I mean, she's an idiot. She has no idea what she's doing. This is the lady that said, well, we've got no source material. Remember? We don't have anything to base any of this stuff on.
And yet, at the end of this film, I really felt like the story they wanted to do was the story of the twins that comes from the novels. That's the thing that drove me the most nuts, is I could hear that in my head. And as the credits were rolling at the end of this movie, I kept thinking, it's like, why didn't you guys just adapt that story? Like, take this idea, these like Sith Imperial zealots that are still running around, that want their power back, that want it so bad that they'll stick Palpatine on a stick. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Like that idea mixed with those original, novels, I think there's something really interesting there. Like, there's a compelling 3 films there, but as it is, this thing is just, I don't know. Like I said, if you're curious about the film, if you've been along for the ride so far, go see it. But if you were left cold by Last Jedi, if the trailers haven't done anything for you, if you've been conflicted about it, if you already have a Disney Plus membership, just wait. So those are kind of those are my total whole impressions of the film. To talk about it anymore would just be to just, it's exhausting, I mean, it really is. I mean, I just like with Last Jedi, in my mind, I imagined what was going to happen, right? because I like the idea of Palpatine on a stick, basically controlled by the people that once put him in power, so desperate that they're going to reanimate him against his will, looking for someone to transfer his essence into because his existence sucks, right?
Yeah.
Like that idea, that's interesting. Palpatine desperate for a way out, whether it means death or living anew through a new body. That's an interesting idea. Like,
yeah, that is an interesting idea.
It's a very cool concept, I think, for me personally. I like that idea a lot. I just wish they'd spent more time actually intelligently leading to that. It would have made more sense. And then by the time you see what they've done to him, you're just like, oh, I mean, you might have even felt for the Emperor for half a second. It's like, wow, these people are so desperate to stay in power. Look what they've done to this guy. Did he have it coming? Maybe he had it coming, but this is hard to watch. Like it's just there's something interesting there. You could almost, in a weird way, for I don't know, half a second, empathize, with Palpatine and where he's at.
Imagine that. Imagine actually having some depth in the story, and he's not just a caricature. But that's not what they did.
I know.
I mean, listen. We can talk about what they should have done or what could have been. I mean, we could have a whole show about that, right? Talking about that. There's so many wasted opportunities here. It boggles the mind. It really does. It boggles the mind. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that they didn't know what they were doing. Kathleen Kennedy's a moron. I mean, she was the one supposed to be steering the ship, but I think she's a figurehead. I don't think she actually is doing anything. I think she's just a figurehead. So there's nobody running the ship. Bob Iger, he comes down and says things every once in a while because Star Wars is very important to him, but he's got the whole company to run. So, and I don't know how creative Bob Iger really is. I don't know what his kind of ideas were. I know that he threw away George Lucas's ideas because he said that in his book.
Yeah,
I know that. So yeah, I mean, there's so many what ifs, and they could have done this, and wouldn't this been that's such a great idea, but that's not what's in the movie. You know what I mean? That's not what they did. And one of the biggest problems I have is like even the things that I think were good, the problem is within their own continuity, within what they showed us before, it doesn't fit. Like the Leia thing is a great example of this, because I know you were really looking forward to this. I know this is something you really like the idea of. It is a good idea, okay, of Luke training Leia. Okay, they did that in the novels, in the expanded universe. It's a good idea for her to be training Rey, except I don't understand why she needs any training. I said that in The Force Awakens. In The Force Awakens, I said she already beat Kylo Ren. Why does she need Luke? I always joke that what was going to happen was in the next movie, after we see Rey comes over with the lightsaber, with Luke, and that's how the movie ends. And then, of course, the first scene is, she gives him the lightsaber and he throws it away. And it's just like, what the hell was that? And then I knew we were in trouble. I knew we were in trouble right away. Yeah. Right away, I knew we were in trouble with that movie. But I joked the way that The Last Jedi was going to open up was that Rey was going to hand Luke the lightsaber, say, hey, this is yours. And then she was going to get back in the Falcon and go destroy the First Order. Why not? What training does she need? Why does she need training? She doesn't. That's the point. They decided what they're trying to do is they're trying to fix things that they broke in the other two movies, and they try to fix them in this movie. It doesn't make any sense. The idea of Luke training Leia doesn't make any sense because in the first movie, they were all trying to find Luke because Luke was like the only Force user left, basically, that wasn't evil. That's in the opening crawl. That's why Snoke is obsessed with finding him. That's why the Resistance is obsessed with finding him, because he's it. There isn't anybody else. That's why it's called The Force Awakens. Because apparently the Force is kind of dormant except for these dark side users. And so the whole premise is that Luke is the only other one. So they've got to find Luke. Luke is it. Well, wait a second. Now we find out that Luke trained Leia. So why do you need Luke?
Right. Why
do you need Luke if Leia's right there? You don't need him. You never needed him. He has no. That's the point. It doesn't. Nothing was built upon anything. It just comes out of nowhere. There's no context. Even judging it by its own standards, judging it by the things it established just in this trilogy, it doesn't fit. It doesn't work because the narrative is broken. The story is completely broken. It's just you can't fix it. They tried so hard to fix this thing, and you can't fix it. I mean, they're going back to things that JJ established himself and contradicting them. It's just like these guys can't even follow their own continuity. They can't even follow their own continuity. And that's the problem. So it's like even things that are good, because I agree with you, the whole idea of Leia being trained by Luke is awesome. They had that in the expanded universe. It's in the Zahn trilogy, which I think they should have just made the Zahn trilogy into a movie.
Yeah.
The Thrawn trilogy with that Timothy Zahn did, the Thrawn trilogy. That's what they should have done. That's a great story.
Yeah.
This stuff is trash. And the fact, and you have to blame Kathleen Kennedy for, she is the one that has to be blamed. I think she is a figurehead, but she says she's in charge. If she's in charge, she's the one to blame because she's the only consistency in this mess. You know, she's the only consistent one. JJ, you know, I can defend a little bit because the fact of the matter is, I know Rian Johnson messed up whatever ideas he was trying to set up in that first movie. Whatever ideas they were destroyed in The Last Jedi, and he had to come back and try to figure out a new ending. I don't believe for a second that he actually intended to bring Palpatine back from the start. Why have Snoke if you're going to bring back Palpatine? There's no reason to do that. You have Snoke. Snoke took over that role. Don't need him. Right. Don't need him. You had a new villain. That was like one thing that I was into. People were speculating, who's Snoke? Where did he come from? What's his deal? Was he some sort of apprentice we never knew about? You know, people were all into that. And what did Rian Johnson say? Who cares? Kill him. Literally, that's what he said. He said that's not important to the story. Kill him off. What story? What story? I mean, it's so confusing to me because it doesn't make any sense. Nothing fits. It's like a disjointed puzzle where they took pieces that don't fit and they just jammed them in. You know, they just jammed them in anyway.
Right.
I mean, it's just a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah. So, I take it you're on the side of don't see this movie.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I would say wait until it comes on Disney Plus, like you said. I don't think there's any reason to go to the theater and see this movie. I really don't. I don't even think the spectacle aspect is worth it to me. I think it's too much. You know, it just didn't appeal to me. So, yeah, I would say, I mean, here's the thing. I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan. Even though I hate these movies, I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan. I haven't stopped being a fan just because of what Disney has done. I'm still a fan. And from that perspective, I wanted to see what they were going to do. And I think most fans want to see what they're going to do, whether they like it, whether they hate it, whether they're sort of about it. They want to see the conclusion, right? So from that perspective, I can see if you're a hardcore fan, yeah, you know, you want to see the end, no matter how bad it is. You just want to see it. You want to see what happens. But if you're like a casual fan, or really not a big Star Wars fan, there's no reason to see this movie. I mean, there's zero reason to see this movie, in my opinion. Now, I will say this, okay? I can't really come up with anything that I really liked in this movie, okay? I joked with my kids that I like. Do you remember the pilot that they kind of kept showing? I think he was in The Force Awakens too. There was this pilot. He was like a real idiot. He was kind of there in the resistance camp. Do you know what I'm even talking about?
No.
That's how forgettable he is. But anyway, he irks me. He irked me in the first movie because we've talked about this idea. that one thing that really irked me in The Force Awakens was the way the pilots talk to each other.
Right.
And you and I have talked about how George Lucas based the pilots in the first Star Wars movie on World War II pilots and the way they talk and how they act and all that stuff. It's really cool. And every time I see that scene at the Battle of Yavin, I always feel that. I'm like, yeah, these guys sound like pilots. They're acting like pilots, you know? Now, The Force Awakens, when we do the Star Killer run, there was something that was really off to me. And I realized my brother, I think, was the one who came up with he's the one who articulated it. I was like, there's something really off. And he said, well, the thing is, JJ is basing his pilots on Star Wars, not on real pilots. Okay?
Right.
Because he's a hack. He doesn't know any better. He's just basing his pilots on Star Wars instead of the actual real stuff. And so they're not convincing. They're not convincing. So anyway, this character was in The Force Awakens, and he was one of the worst. And just totally unconvincing. And then he's bumbling in this movie and being an idiot. I remember he's just like a bumbling idiot. Anyway, he's in the final battle, and he died. And I was like, that's awesome. That's really cool. That was my favorite part. They killed that guy. I was like, that's cool. At least he killed that annoying guy. That's another thing is like there's no like they didn't do anything. There was no daring. Like they didn't kill off Chewbacca. Remember we did our death pool, and I think we actually didn't get anything right because we said Leia was going to live and she died.
Right.
We literally didn't get anything right. They didn't kill anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
It would have been a lot more daring to kill Chewie. That Rey killed Chewie. But no, they took that away. We thought that they were going to kill C-3PO, wiping his memory. Nope. Turns out that R2-D2 had a backup. They wouldn't even do that. So it's like they were very, like, they didn't take any real chances in this movie. The only character they killed was Kylo Ren, right? It's the only major character that died.
And the Emperor. I think the Emperor is officially dead now.
No, we can bring him back. I mean, now we know the way the Force works. We can bring him back anytime we want. Nobody's really dead anymore. The fact that he survived the Death Star in the first place, we can bring him back anytime we want. I mean, they've just made it ridiculous. So we can bring him back. But the only one that really died was of the main characters was Kylo Ren. And I think that's if you can call Hux a major character, they killed him off. Which that was cool. I was cool with killing him off because I thought he was a bumbling idiot, you know?
Yep.
He was a fool. And the General Pride character, even though I think the name is silly, I like that idea, like you said, of that sort of Imperial zealot, this guy that's like, you know, he's at his core an Imperial. He doesn't really even care about the First Order. He's still like Empire. You know what I mean? So I like that. So General Pride was okay. But here's the thing. I did ask my girls what they liked. Okay. So that I'm not totally negative. I asked them what they like. My kids range in age basically from 8 to 13. This is the things that they liked. Okay. They liked the little Pixar robot.
Okay.
The little Pixar guy.
Yeah.
That's what I call him to them. I think he's actually D-O is what officially that thing is called.
The little
Pixar robot. The Pixar logo guy.
Yeah, the lampshade robot.
So, which by the way, I thought he was worthless, but my kids liked him. They thought he was cute, and they liked it. So, there was that. They liked because I asked them because they all said they liked it. I was like, well, what did you like? So this is what they told me.
Okay.
They liked the Pixar robot. I told you apparently one of my kids is a Raylo. So one of my kids did like the kiss, which I almost threw up. I thought that was so cringy. But one of my kids liked the kiss, the fact that Rey and Kylo Ren kissed. Another one of my kids liked because one of my their favorite character is Rey. They liked that Kylo Ren saved Rey. They liked that.
Okay.
And the other thing, and this is kind of funny because I hated this, but one of my kids really liked this. One of my kids really liked when Luke caught the lightsaber, when Rey threw the lightsaber away and he caught it.
Right. Yeah.
One of my kids really liked that.
Okay. Well, that scene in particular was a total JJ getting back at Ryan. I know they keep telling us he was not doing that, but that scene right there really felt like that. Because Ray's throwing it away and Luke catches it, and the first thing he basically tells her is he was wrong.
No, JJ was trying to fix the damage. No, that's very clear, and other people have talked about this. JJ was clearly trying to fix The Last Jedi. I think he hates that film as much as anybody else. He has said things, because you have to kind of look behind what they actually say. Because I've seen him say things where he was pretty pissed, you know what I mean, about that whole situation, and he was like, what did this guy do, And it's very clear. It's very clear if you watch The Rise of Skywalker that J.J. Abrams was not a fan of The Last Jedi. In fact, what's really funny about the criticism of this film is that basically all the Last Jedi people that love The Last Jedi hate this film. They hate it. So it's actually united fandom menace with people that like The Last Jedi. Now, they don't like it for completely different reasons, right? They have completely different reasons for not liking it. But it's funny because they both don't like it. So fandom menace doesn't like it, but then also the people that loved The Last Jedi and defended The Last Jedi, they hate this film. They hate it. So it's my point is, it's very obvious that JJ was trying to address those issues, and a lot of people have given him credit for that, and I will give him credit for that too, because The Last Jedi was such a mess. Obviously there was no fixing it. I don't think there was any way to fix it. He tried, like I said, one of my kids really liked that Luke caught the lightsaber. Now, the issue I have with that is that Force Ghost shouldn't be able to do that. He's a ghost.
Right.
But then he also lifted his starfighter out. It's like, well, in the previous film, Yoda destroyed the Jedi Temple. So it's like, okay, why don't the ghosts come and do something then?
Yeah. Why didn't? Because that was the thing. When we saw everything the ghosts were doing, I didn't understand why the ghosts were not present when Rey was fighting the Emperor and they were encouraging her. I thought they were going to kind of step out of the ether and be all standing there blue and glowing. And I thought we were going to see all of them behind her. Literally, at least visually, they're ghosts behind her.
Why didn't they actually intervene?
Almost like Lord of the Rings. Remember when Aragorn found all the people that were trapped because of the sins they had committed? And he's like, help me, do this and I will set you free. I'll release the curse, the thing that bonds you to serve, or betray, Like, he's like, if you do this, I'll let you go, and it's like an army of ghosts. I thought at the very least, because I knew because I'd seen some spoiler stuff, I knew that scene was going to be in the film, but I thought at least we were going to see their Force ghosts. I was like, well, we'll get to see a Force ghost Sam Jackson. We get to see a Force ghost Ewan again. It'd be kind of fun to see all those characters in the finale. And it's just voiceover.
There's another huge problem here, okay, which is that it was established in the prequels that Qui-Gon was the first Jedi to figure out how to be a Force ghost.
Right.
Okay. And that the reason Obi-Wan was able to do it and the reason Yoda was able to do it was because they learned from him. Now everybody does it. Leia does it. Kylo Ren did it. Who taught Kylo Ren how to do that? I mean, it's just silly. And again, it comes back to the whole thing. It's like they just made it all silly.
Yeah.
Anything that was established before, they just like, because talking about the Force Ghost, a lot of people are like, how does Mace Windu know how to be a Force Ghost?
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. It's just such a mess. It's from a narrative point of view, it's such a mess. But I will say, clearly they were trying to address a lot of the damage that The Last Jedi did, and I just don't think it was possible. You just couldn't fix it. You couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. It was out,
Right.
And I just don't think there was any fixing it. But I will give JJ some credit because I think he at least tried.
Yeah.
He at least tried. And then, from a casual perspective of someone who does not really looking that deep, doesn't really care about story. Um, you know, some of these things I think succeeded. I've seen people who like this movie. I mean, posts from people who really like the movie because they have a very superficial understanding of it, and it's just like, oh, well, that's cool. It's like my kids. Oh yeah, I like the Pixar thing. That's cute. So
All right.
there's
All right.
that perspective. There's that perspective.
No, I get it because I do notice there's some people who like the film, and like I said, I don't hate the film, but I'm not a huge fan of the film either because, like I said, I'm happy with some of the things they did, and I think they had some really powerful and interesting ideas that I feel like were kind of wasted in the way in which they employed them in the film itself. So, do we feel like that's good for our review here, our spoiler review, and everything for Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, I mean, I could pick this thing apart all day. I actually got this list of like 21 things that are wrong with this film. And I'm just going to mention that I decided not to incorporate it, but it's like my whole point after giving you that list was going to be like, yeah, this just barely scratches the surface of all the things that are wrong in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're good. So maybe we'll go ahead and we'll close out the show if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Let me take this stuff down. All right.
Okay. All right. So I want to thank you for hopefully watching and listening to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I've been one of your hosts. You can see more of my art, learn more about me at my website. That's it's just davebeatty.com. That's www.davebeaty.com. Sketches, all kinds of fun stuff. You'll find it there. I want to thank Eric Alexander for obviously hosting the show. Tell me, Eric, where can the people who are watching or listening learn more about you on the interwebs?
I'm most active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is BaseGod14, which you can see at the bottom of my screen here. BASSGOD14. That's BaseGod14. That's also my YouTube handle, which is one of the avenues that we broadcast this show on. And then I just ask people to always keep in mind my company, Bad Bob Productions.
Very cool. So I'd encourage you to come back next week as we hopefully wrap up our coverage of Mandalorian with the last episode and talk about that. Also, we're going to be discussing the second episode of the second issue of the Picard miniseries that's actually helping to lead into the Picard series. And of course, we're going to begin to ramp up our coverage of Picard as we race towards the premiere. So again, I want to thank you for hopefully watching and listening to the Retro Rogues.